So this is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg, and it's chilly. A high of -9 today in the city of Winnipeg with wind chill. It'll feel like -24 this morning and around -14 this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. We are on air with InfoRad until 8:37 a.m. with our team here at the show, and you might be listening on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the CBC Listen app. You could be watching us also this morning on our YouTube channel. Good morning. Let's say good morning to the team. Speaking of the YouTube channel, Travis Peterson behind the controls. Good morning, Trav. Good morning, Abby Adiemi behind the other controls of our morning show here, our senior technical producer. And there's Pat Kanuga. Good morning, Pat. Pat is our studio director and covers weather traffic on the program. Let's get over to Heather Wells, who's in our news center this morning. It's 3 minutes to 6. We've had very serious news throughout the weekend here in Winnipeg, and she's here with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, Winnipeg police are still on the scene of a house on Langside after an early Sunday morning shooting claimed the lives of 4 people. Police had said yesterday 3 people died and a man and woman remained in critical condition. The family of the woman has since told CBC News late last night she too has passed away. Constable Jason Mikulishin says no arrests have been made. We're going to hear from some people who live in the area coming up in our next news. And if you normally take the bus around the city, you may need a little extra time. The City of Winnipeg's warning of possible transit delays today as the Union for Transit Workers steps up job action. Our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right, Heather, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
In Winnipeg, our current temperature, by the way, is -14 degrees right now. Brandon's -13. Dauphin is sitting at -12. And just looking up to Thompson, it's -22 degrees in Thompson this morning. Well, in the program, in the first hour of the show, climate change columnist Emily Ferrier is going to be here to talk about how to spot greenwashing this holiday season. So stay tuned. We'll tell you how to navigate the products out there. In addition, a little bit later in the show, a local coffee shop says they can't believe they've been robbed for the second time this month. They're out in Fort Richmond. They say they want answers. We'll hear more about what happened. CBC's Jim Agapito visited the shop in the area to find out more about what's been going on. And then a little bit later in the program, a Winnipeg man deemed incapable of caring for himself says he was going to lose his house unless he get out from the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba. We'll have that story.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Jinx Monsoon and Ben Della Creme are some of the biggest superstars in the world of drag, and they'll be here to talk about the holiday specials that inspired them, how they build a sense of safety and community at their shows, and what keeps them coming back to collaborate with one another every year.
It's the time of year where we get a little nutty.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcy Young. Today is the final day of the 4-day humanitarian pause in Gaza, but negotiators are working on an extension. While that work goes on, another 11 Israeli hostages are due to be freed today in exchange for more than 30 Palestinians being held in Israeli jails. Margaret Evans has the latest from Jerusalem.
A sound of relief as one more group of Israeli hostages was reported back in Israel late yesterday. Cheered across the country, especially by survivors in the communities from where Hamas killed and kidnapped its victims on October 7th. Iftak Selnika is from Kibbutz Be'eri.
I think it was literally the first moment of happiness that we had here for a long, long time.
14 other members of his community are still believed held hostage. This is the last of a 4-day agreed pause to allow for exchanges between hostages held by Hamas and Palestinians held in Israeli jails. But talk of an extended truce continues to surface. Last-minute differences over the agreed names on today's exchange lists highlight the tenuous nature of it all.
I've never seen the scale before, the destruction.
UNICEF's James Elder, inside Gaza, says there must be a longer break in fighting to ease the suffering of Palestinians there.
And the people, they just bear the marks of immense distress, of trauma, street after street, reduced to rubble.
The pause has allowed for a greater volume of aid trucks to enter the Gaza Strip, but NGOs say it's far from enough. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to resume fighting against Hamas with full force when the pause ends. But most analysts agree pressure to secure the release of still more hostages will be enormous. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Tech giant Elon Musk is meeting with Israel's leadership today.
Last night, some of them returned home. Not home yet. But,
A soldier leads Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Musk on a rainy tour of a kibbutz in southern Israel. It was one of the places attacked by Hamas October 7th. The SpaceX owner has reached an agreement with the Israeli government to use his Starlink communication satellites in Israel and the Gaza Strip. Musk has recently come under fire for agreeing with an anti-Semitic post on his social media platform X. The post claimed that Jewish people were stoking hatred against white people. Musk's comments led to several advertisers leaving the platform. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is expected to put her controversial Sovereignty Act into action today. She says she will use the law to shield Alberta's power companies from the federal government's proposed clean electricity rules. For more on the implications, let's go to CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Janice, why is Premier Smith doing this?
Well, it might be just a shot across the bow. The regulations Smith is pushing back on, they aren't even final yet, but this is an escalation from simply complaining, making vague threats about the unfairness of the federal clean electricity regulations, to actually now acting on what the Smith government will argue is a legal justification for her provincial authorities to disregard the national standards that are supposed to be in effect by 2035. Smith has said for months that timeline is too short because Alberta relies more on natural gas. It's going to be relatively harder for it to comply with the federal regulations. And Smith says she's not going to leave her province without the affordable electricity it needs in the meantime if the real goal is actually net zero emissions by 2050. She told the audience of her Saturday morning radio show that the person who doesn't get how unfair this is the federal environment minister.
Stephen Guilbeault, I don't know. He's a maverick. He doesn't seem to care about the law, doesn't care about the Constitution. I do, and we're going to make sure that we assert that.
Jurisdiction for environmental regulations is shared between the federal and provincial governments. Recent court decisions have sided with people who argued Ottawa was overreaching with things like its environmental impact assessments and plastics regulations. This piles on to that to also push back on these electricity regulations.
Where does this leave the federal government?
Well, a federal provincial working group was supposed to be trying to sort this out before the regulations were finalized, and a spokesperson for Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson told CBC News over the weekend, notwithstanding this move, that work continues in good faith. But when Atlantic premiers, cabinet ministers and Liberal MPs from there pushed back against clean fuel regulations and escalating carbon prices on home heating that they felt disproportionately targeted their region, they got a bit of a reprieve. So we'll see if a similar argument for Western Canada finds the same kind of sympathy in Ottawa.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. A prominent theology professor was fired last week from a Christian university in New Brunswick. It follows a 6-month investigation into inappropriate behavior. CBC News has learned the professor faced similar allegations at his previous college. Regent College in Vancouver investigated John Stackhouse in 2014 for similar allegations. But as Katie Nicholson reports, the results of that investigation were kept secret.
I would assume that someone who was not held accountable for his actions was going to simply continue the same misconduct at a different institution.
Former Regent College student Abigail Harmon says John Stackhouse's behavior with women was well known. A celebrated academic and author of a book on Christianity and feminism, Stackhouse taught at Regent College for 17 years before moving to Crandall University in 2015. Multiple sources, as well as documents reviewed by CBC News, reveal he was investigated before leaving Regent because of allegations of inappropriate behavior and at least one instance of unwanted touching. Sources also say the terms of Stackhouse's departure from Regent were kept secret through a non-disclosure agreement. When Crandall hired him, it appears it may have had no way to know about the past investigation. On Wednesday, Crandall fired Stackhouse and made the investigators' summary report public. Regent College said it is disturbed and saddened by the allegations about Stackhouse at Crandall, but it can't comment any further because of privacy law.
As an alumnus of Regent, I'm frankly embarrassed.
Michael Buttry is completing a PhD in ethics at the University of Toronto. He says Regent needs to examine how it handled its own investigation and how the secrecy allowed him to move to another school.
I think Regent's decision-making falls far below the standards we should expect of any institution, but especially a Christian one.
As for John Stackhouse, he hasn't responded to CBC's numerous requests for comment. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
New Zealand's new Conservative government is promising to repeal the country's anti-smoking laws. The ban would have been a first of its kind. Anyone born after 2008 would not be allowed to buy cigarettes. It also limited the levels of nicotine in cigarettes and the number of retailers. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon and his new government were sworn in earlier today. He says his focus is on making life better for the people of New Zealand.
We now have a responsibility to deliver for New Zealanders, to give them clear, demonstrable and measurable improvements in the quality of their lives.
The National Party leader says his government is still committed to reducing tobacco use, but he says a smoking ban would have only fed into an illegal tobacco sale. Tens of thousands of Quebec teachers are starting this school week on strike. They walked off the job Thursday, and they say they will not go back until they get a better deal from the province. Kwabineo Oduro tells us how that is affecting parents.
7-year-old Aria Leger could be out of school for a while. Her teachers are among 66,000 educators in Quebec's French elementary and secondary schools who are on strike.
We're taking it day by day. I mean, it's tough logistically.
Christelle Leger says her own mom is planning to fly in from New Brunswick to help with childcare. The union, known as FAE Quebec, says the strike is affecting about 40% of Quebec students. Teachers walked off the job Thursday in the middle of contract negotiations with the province. Maud Pollender says they are asking for better wages and better working conditions.
You go into education to make a difference, and if you can't make a difference in your day-to-day teaching, then you feel like a failure, and it's not a good feeling.
Hundreds of union members rallied outside the CBC Radio-Canada office in Montreal on Sunday evening, while inside, Quebec's Treasury Board President Sonia Lebel was on Radio-Canada's Tout le monde en parle.
On va trouver une voie de passage, puis leurs préoccupations sont bien entendues.
She says she hears what teachers are saying, but that the government also needs to offer better services to Quebecers. The FAE is one of several unions in contract negotiations with the province right now. Some, representing about 400,000 public sector workers, have banded together to make what they call the Common Front. They are set to announce this week whether they will also walk off the job indefinitely. Kwabineo Oduro, CBC News, Montreal.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Markusa. This is Information Radio on CBC. We're live in downtown Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us this morning on the show. Time right now is 6:10 a.m. Temperature currently is minus 14 degrees. This hour on the show, following a weekend that saw the release of many hostages held by Hamas, we're starting to learn how some of those people are doing emotionally. We're going to hear from a psychiatrist about that this hour on the program. Plus, more analysis of the latest of what is going on in the war. Over the weekend here in Winnipeg, we had two different gatherings of people who were showing support and concern. In addition, this hour on the program, climate change columnist Emily Ferrier has a column this morning about how to spot greenwashing this holiday season. And speaking of marketing, do commercials show pickup trucks driving through the wilderness rev your engine? CBC's Blair Sanderson looks at vehicle marketing and why a UK watchdog recently banned a Toyota commercial. So we'll find out more about that. Stay tuned. Right now, as I've been mentioning, we had a very serious weekend here in Manitoba, in Winnipeg specifically. Heather Wells is in with news updates this morning. Hi there.
Good morning. Yes, we are learning of one more person who has died after that shooting early yesterday on Langside. Initially, police had said 3 people died and a man and woman remained critical. The family of the woman tells CBC News late last night she too has passed away. 4 people now have died. Constable Jason Mikulishin says no arrests have been made. Now, Angela Clausen at the West Broadway Bear Clan says the group will meet to discuss the possibility of stepping up patrols in the area. A Winnipeg man deemed incapable of caring for himself says he is going to lose his house unless he gets out from under the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba. We're going to hear that story from CBC's I-Team coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Heather Wells and Pat Kanuga.
Hello.
Who wants to guess the cold spot? Don't look, Pat. Heather
I'm
Wells?
going to say...
Okay.
I'm going to say Churchill.
Okay, guess how cold, though. That's the best part. Or the worst part. It's Heather's turn. It's Heather's turn.
Okay, Heather.
No, okay, I'm going to say minus 25.
Pat.
I'm going to say minus 33.7 in Lynn Lake.
Stop. See? I knew he cheats.
He is a cheater. Come on, Pat.
I present the weather, so it's my job to know this. I actually wrote it down this morning. The hot spot is minus 12.5. Good morning, Swan River.
You took your whole punchline, Heather.
Sorry.
I was ignoring him. Minus 34, though. He's right. Well, minus 33.7.
They round up.
Right?
Or round down, I should say.
Do you know the good news is, as Pat's going to tell you, tomorrow we warm up.
Does it get nicer tomorrow?
Yeah. In fact, what a nice transition. Thank you, Heather Wells. It's beautiful. So I just looked at Brandon and Winnipeg, and again, all minus single digits for daytime highs. So let's look at Winnipeg then. So yeah, minus 9 today for daytime high. We're minus 14. As we speak, wind chill of minus 19. And not much wind out there right now. Northwest 8 kilometers per hour. But so we'll get to that minus 9 today with a mix of sun and cloud. We're mostly cloudy across southern Manitoba. We have some light cloud in the Pembina Valley area, but a lot of cloud in the southeast and southwest corners of the province. And then tonight we'll dip down to a minus 18, so that's a cold one. But then tomorrow, 2 on the plus side. Wednesday, 3 on the plus side. That rink I just poured this week is going to be melting. Thursday, Friday, minus 1 and minus 3. And way off in the next weekend, a minus 6 and a minus 7. So no real deep freeze because we're into December by Friday, December 1st on Friday. And we know that we can have deep freezes into December. But this last week in November, pretty balmy actually. Average daytime high for this time of year is a minus 6 and a minus 15 overnight. So you can see we're going to be much warmer than that. That's what Winnipeg is looking like for the next few days. Brandon, you're minus 13 right now, mostly cloudy as well. Clearing today and a minus 9. And then again, Brandon's going to be warmer tomorrow. Sunshine and 2 in the afternoon, but gusty winds to 60. Good morning, Thompson. Yes, you're chilly as well. Minus 24, wind chill of minus 29. And clearing later in the day, high of minus 15. Tonight, another chilly one, minus 24, but then the temperature rises by morning to minus 16. And then tomorrow, high of minus 8, so much warmer for Thompson tomorrow. Let's see here. I'll tell you once again, we're minus 14 in the downtown. More for your regional forecast at 6:35. In traffic, 788-3093. That is the traffic line. Northbound Main at Higgins and Logan. There's some sewer works. That's northbound Main between Logan and Higgins. So a couple of, at least one lane closed there. And southbound Pipeline Road between Story and Templeton is closed for sewer work. So if that is kind of your little shortcut from North Winnipeg into that Maples area, that is happening. Southbound Pipeline Road between Story and Templeton is closed for sewer work. Once again, that traffic line is 788-3093.
.15 a.m. is the time right now, and over the weekend here in Winnipeg, members of the Jewish community and supporters of Israel packed the gym at the Asper Jewish Community Campus for conversation. As well, over the weekend, Palestinians here held a rally at the legislature with more than 250 supporters showing up. Over the weekend, the release of hostages held by Hamas. We're starting to learn more about how some of those people are feeling about being freed. They, of course, will face a lot of conflicting emotions, including the joy of being released, but also the grief of what they witnessed. And there's anxiety about those left behind, and then there's guilt that can come with that. Neil Greenberg is a psychiatrist and a hostage expert. He's also a professor of defense mental health at King's College in London.
Well, I think it's really important to recognise that anybody who's been in detention for any period of time is likely to have found it very frightening. They're likely to be distressed when they get released, and also readapting back to life can take a bit of time, and it can be disorientating. So at the moment, I would very much hope that the primary focus is not to make them into a mental health patient. So I wouldn't expect that mental health professionals would be treating them as a patient. But what they might be doing is to be there to support them, to give them some general advice, to sort of map out what the likely pathway is going to be for people as they begin to readapt. And I think it's important to say that information also needs to be given to family and loved ones, because the way they deal with the hostage and bring them back into their family, into their social network, very much depends on how the hostage does. So I think they should be getting some information, setting out what might happen, and then gently and relatively informally, they should be having a chat with them just to make sure that they're going along the right pathway. Because in the first few days and even the first few weeks or months, it's quite usual to have, nightmares, to be distressed, to be jumpy, to be distrustful. All of those symptoms are very normal, and they don't by themselves indicate that a hostage or an ex-hostage is ill. Inevitably, though, some of the people who will have been in detention will go on and develop mental health problems. And what's important is that they're monitored in a general way, so that if they do develop a mental health problem, they can get formal treatment early on. I think it's very difficult to describe a single pathway for how people recover. But what we know is that some people are very good at switching off, because they can't control what happens to them in captivity. They distract themselves, and other people spend all their time focusing on what might be the very worst outcome for them and their fellow hostages. It really does vary a lot. I think what's important to recognise is that when people come out of captivity, there isn't a steady pathway where everyone recovers. There can be days when absolutely you're on top of the world, and there'll be other moments where actually it all seems so complicated that actually being back in captivity might even seem attractive, because at least that existence was simple. So it's fair to say there is a wide spectrum of responses.
That was Neil Greenberg, a psychiatrist and professor of defense mental health at King's College London. He was speaking about some of the mental health challenges for the hostages held by Hamas who were released over the weekend. Coming up still this hour on the program at 10 to 7 this morning, we're going to hear more about developments today and who else is expected to be released. As you may have heard on World Report, apparently there is there's some disagreement, this is the word I'm looking for, about today's release. And so we're going to hear more about what's going on. That's coming up just before 7 o'clock.
It's a wonderful time of year. A season worth celebrating. A season of giving. A season for kindness. Let's make the season kind for those in need. December 1st, CBC is devoting a day of programming in support of Harvest Manitoba. Music, stories, and giving. Make the season kind. Visit cbc.ca/BeKindMB for details.
We really hope you can join us on Friday for our special day of broadcast. As you just heard there, of course, if you've never tuned in before to Make the Season Kind, it's all about really leaning into what's going on now when it comes to hunger in Manitoba. And then by extension, just spending a day hearing stories and also celebrating with music and artists and kindness, which is why it's called Make the Season Kind. So we're still nailing down who's going to be performing during the morning show. Really looking forward to it. I know we've got a local school choir represented. I'm excited about that. I always love some choirs. This one, I think, from Amber Trails. There's a little teaser for you. But we hope you can join us all day long on Friday as we come together. Well, speaking of music, Alex Nunez's next new song, first started taking shape 6 years ago, he says, in his childhood home in Ajax, Ontario. He felt compelled to finally release it, he says, though, when his brother died. This is Alex Nunez with a song about the impermanence of life. It's called Fear of Being Erased on CBC. Alex Niaz. New music from him. It's 6:24 a.m. It's Monday morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Marcy Markusa. This is CBC. Well, with the holiday season coming up, December 1st is already Friday, right? A lot of people might be thinking about how to plan and celebrate a green Christmas, but how can you be sure you're choosing the right products or if you're being greenwashed? If you're interested in being eco-conscious, as most people are these days, climate change columnist Emily Ferrier spoke to Pat about it.
Good morning.
So from the time the tree goes up until the last present is unwrapped, how much waste accumulates during the holiday season? And I'm thinking my own living room right now, and I think I know. What are you seeing?
So over the next month or so, Canadians will throw away an average of 110 pounds of garbage per household.
Wow.
Yeah. So to give you an idea of where this waste is all coming from, here's my climate change version of the 12 Days of Christmas, but spoken word because I don't want to ruin your listeners' day.
Okay.
Canadians buy around 4.3 million turkeys, 3,000 tons of foil, 2.6 billion greeting cards, 27.8 million natural Christmas trees, 7.3 million artificial trees, 6 million rolls of tape, and 250,000 tons of plastic packaging around this time of year. Now,
wow.
So I bet some of you are wanting to reduce some of these numbers and choose options with the least environmental impact. So there are some things to look out for. As a wise Muppet once said, it's not easy being green. And some companies make it even harder by greenwashing to make their products seem beneficial to the environment when really it's just a load of humbug.
Humbug, yeah. So what claims are companies making to seem more eco-friendly?
So luckily, we heard this week from the federal government in the fall fiscal update that Ottawa is planning on doing more to crack down on some of these practices, proposing amendments to the Competition Act to enhance protections for consumers, workers, and the environment by prohibiting these misleading greenwashing claims. So we'll see if they can perform a Christmas miracle and keep the green spirit up all year round. But in the meantime, we need to stay vigilant. Not only is greenwashing annoying when you're just trying to do everything right, but it's also, in some cases, illegal. And some of these greenwashing tactics that you can look out for include claiming to be on track to reduce emissions to net zero when there's no credible plan in place, being vague about operations or materials used, misleading labels such as green or eco-friendly that have no standard definitions, claiming to avoid illegal or non-standard practices that are completely irrelevant to the product, and trying to use one positive to cancel out all the negative, like saying that a product is made from recycled materials, but it was produced in a high-emitting factory that pollutes the air and the waterways.
So how can we do our best to support these companies that are making an effort, at least, when it comes to the environment, Emily?
It can be time-consuming, but where you can, take time to research and choose products from companies who use their resources responsibly and are committed to cutting their emissions and waste. A good measure check is to see if the company is aligned with any of the UN's climate sustainability initiatives, such as the UNFCCC's Race to Zero, the Fashion Industry Charter for Climate Action, and the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion. So try considering the entire life cycle of the product, from the extraction of the raw materials to the eventual disposal, like, for instance, fake Christmas trees. This Christmas tree argument comes up pretty well every year,
yes,
the real
course.
versus fake.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do have an artificial tree for at least 5 to 10 years, that's ultimately going to have less of a carbon footprint than a natural tree being composted or incinerated every year, according to the NWF. However, if you're supporting a local tree farm that promotes biodiversity, then a natural tree is a good option, as that tree has been growing and absorbing an average of 1 ton of CO2 in its lifetime. So you do need to kind of consider the whole life cycle you're going to have it for, and then look for transparency and accountability. Check for UN-backed credibility standards, and where possible, look for a certified B Corp. They tend to be a solid choice when it comes to these values.
So in your research here, I'm curious to know what we can do. What have you found out to make sure that, we can have a green Christmas this year?
With gifts, choose gifts that have the least amount of packaging. So experiences are a great option. Tickets for events or digital subscriptions or any other activity that you can think that's package free. If you are getting physical gifts, bring your own reusable shopping bags. Sounds obvious, but it's very easy to forget. I do homemade gifts and have for years, so I usually start making them in around September and then work through until Christmas. I taught myself how to knit, crochet, make ornaments, embroider, and if I can teach myself how to do it, I promise you anyone can. I found that people really appreciate the effort and care that goes into a homemade gift, and it's personalized and special. When wrapping your gifts, a lot of wrapping paper can't be recycled. So if it's got foil, cellophane, or glitter, it is going to be tossed in the landfill. So try to find wrapping paper that's 100% recycled, like craft paper, and you can personalize it if you don't like plain craft paper. Save anything that you can, like ribbons, bows, bags, and reuse those next year. And so same thing with decorations. Get things that are reusable and made from long-lasting materials and aren't just going to be tossed out every year. Or go into the backyard or a friend who has a backyard and clip some greenery to spruce up the place.
That's a good idea.
Sorry about the pun.
It's okay. Well, Emily.
It's much better. Yeah.
Thanks for these tips and thanks for bringing the story this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Pat Kanuga talking to Emily Ferrier, who's a writer, comedian, and researcher of individual action on climate change, talking about how to celebrate a green Christmas. Business Report coming up after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is minus 14. We're climbing to minus 9 today. That is cooler than normal. The good news is we warm back up above normal tomorrow. Winnipeg police are still on the scene of a mass shooting in West Broadway early Sunday. 4 people are dead. Police had said yesterday 3 people died and a man and woman were critical. The family of the woman tells CBC News she too has died. Police say they arrived on Langside between Sarah and Broadway early Sunday morning to find 5 people who had been shot. Constable Jason Mikulishin says it is still unclear how the victims were related.
As far as the individuals directly involved, we don't know yet. We don't know what their involvement, their association. There are a lot of questions that have yet to be answered.
Now, some people who live on Langside woke up to that crime scene. Harmony Williams had to leave her apartment building out the back door because the front entrance was blocked off. She says the violence is too close for comfort.
It's scary that this is happening so close to us. It's just like we're all chilling. It's been a good summer. Nothing bad, really big like this has happened. So it's just like, I don't know. It's crazy. It's getting scary out here.
Angela Clausen at the West Broadway Bear Clan says the group will meet to decide the possibility of stepping up patrols in the area. She and others say if police are able to make arrests, people in the area will feel safer. If you normally take the bus around the city, you may need a little extra time. The City of Winnipeg's warning of possible transit delays today as the Union for Transit Workers steps up job action. The Amalgamated Transit Union has rejected the city's latest offer. It cites unsafe working conditions and the high demand for overtime causing stress for transit operators. A Winnipeg man who was deemed incapable of caring for himself says he is going to lose his house unless he gets out from under the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargoot reports.
I've always looked after myself.
Last December, Paul Cameron Miller froze his feet when he went out for a walk to the drugstore and spent 6 months in hospital. By the time he was released, doctors diagnosed him with dementia and determined the 65-year-old could not care for himself, so he was placed under the care and control of the Public Guardian and Trustee of Manitoba, or PGT, nearly a year ago.
I want that year back. I want to live it my way.
His friend Chris Olofsson is trying to help him figure out a way to get out from under the public trustee so that he can make his own decisions with his house and finances.
When the PGT takes over, they take over everything so that suddenly your identity is gone and you are no longer a person, and that's the way he's been treated recently.
Miller and Olofsson say since they told their story to CBC News, the public trustee has reached out to them and scheduled a meeting for today. They hope it will be a first step in getting Miller back out on his own. Caroline Bargoot, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Today is the final day of the 4-day pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas. Thousands of people last night lining the streets near a military base in southern Israel as the latest group of hostages arrived from Gaza. 14 people were included in that release, with another 11 scheduled to be handed over today. In that exchange, 33 Palestinians are expected to be released from Israeli prisons. As for the 4-day pause in fighting, Hamas says it is willing to consider an extension. However, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas needs to guarantee the release of at least another 10 hostages a day. You can hear the latest on this story, as well as other national and international news, coming up on World Report at 7. An unexpected delay for Winnipeggers who wanted to get a jump on their Christmas baking. Sugar has been in short supply because of an ongoing strike at the Rogers Sugar Refinery in Vancouver, and that's driving up prices, leaving some grocery shelves bare. Tariq Zeid manages the food fair on Portage Avenue.
As soon as it gets on the news, people start panicking, and then they start panic buying, and then they start loading up on, right now it's sugar. In the past, it's been toilet paper.
Rogers Sugar and its union agreed to mediation yesterday. Workers have been on strike for nearly 2 months. The Nashville Predators found their mark last night.
Morrissey centered it, got a bucket, scored!
Josh Morrissey in the third period on TSN as the Jets were edged by Nashville 3-2. It was the final stop on Winnipeg's road trip. Coach Rick Bowness.
We gifted them 2 goals. I didn't like the penalty killer goal either. We had our chances. We could have won that game pretty easily.
The Jets now come back home to host Dallas tomorrow night. Winnipeg and Dallas, by the way, are tied for second spot in the Central Division. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to say thank you, Pat. Do you see my mouth? I went, I'm looking at Pat and I'm talking to Heather.
You okay?
Just Monday. Just Monday.
It's Monday mouth. Yes, there we go.
Thank you, Heather Wells. All right, so what do we got, Pat?
What do you want to know?
I want to know,
cold?
I think most listeners want to know,
A
how
chilly.
cold and...
A little chilly in parts of the province this morning. In Winnipeg, we're at a minus 14 right now. We will warm up today, though, to a daytime high of minus 9. Not great. Average daytime high for this time of year is minus 6, so we're a little bit colder today. But just wait. Tomorrow, we're going to see a 2. On Wednesday, a 3. And on Thursday, Friday, a minus 1 and a minus 3. So no deep freeze here for the Peg. And southern Manitoba not in a deep freeze. And overnight low tonight is minus 18, though. So that's almost plug in the vehicles. But then the next few nights, minus 5s for overnight lows after tonight. So, and I should mention, yes, mix of sun and cloud today. Right now, looking at satellite imagery, a lot of cloud cover over the province. Kind of Interlake and Pembina Valley area have some lighter cloud, but really thick in the east and west parts of the province this morning. Let's go over to Brandon, since it's the regional forecast for this Monday, November 27th. And Brandon, you're minus 13, mainly clear right now. And then on the way to a minus 9, mainly cloudy, I should say, right now. And minus 9 is the daytime high, just like Winnipeg. And tonight we'll dip down to a minus 16, but then temperature rises to minus 11 by morning. Interesting phenomena overnight is the temperature rising. And then tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud for Brandon and a plus 2. Thompson, good morning. Up Highway 6, you're minus 24, wind chill of minus 29 at this hour. Clearing skies today. Clear, cold, minus 15. And tonight we'll dip down to a minus 24, but then temperature rises to minus 16 by morning and then rises even more by the afternoon with a minus 8. Could see 2 to 4 centimeters of snow, though, tomorrow, Thompson. So minus 8 tomorrow, your daytime high. Lots of minus 13s right now and minus 9s for daytime highs in places such as Dauphin Parkland region, Verdun, Melita. And that's what those temperatures are right now. Elsewhere, Morden Winkler, minus 14 right now on the way to a minus 9. Gimli Interlake, you're to minus 15. You'll warm up to a minus 11 today. And let's see here. Where else? Pinawa, minus 14 on the way to a 10. Once again, we're minus 14 in the city of Winnipeg with a wind chill of minus 19 if you're waiting for a bus this morning or out and about. In traffic, no reports of stalls, crashes, or major incidents at 6:38 in the morning, but give me a call at 788-3093 if there's anything hampering your commute.
All right. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Time for our business report with Crystalie Ramlakan. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Marcy.
So the big 6 banks in Canada are set to report their latest results this week. What can we expect?
Well, analysts are predicting lower earnings as banks set aside more money to cover defaults on loans. So economic growth has slowed over the past couple of months, as we've been seeing, as the Bank of Canada has raised its key interest rate to 5% in an effort to fight inflation. So higher borrowing costs and more cautious banks mean the key trend in the banking industry lately has been a decrease in lending. Waves of mortgage renewals are also coming up in the next couple of years, which will push monthly payments higher. And banks have been preparing for all of this by cutting back on expenses and staff. So experts are predicting more restructuring in the lending and capital market businesses and a focus on profitable and higher margin businesses. So overall, the shifts will show banks preparing for rockier times. Scotiabank kicks off the earnings tomorrow. CIBC, TD Bank, and RBC report on Thursday, and BMO and National Bank report on Friday.
The oil and gas and well drilling sector is lobbying. Hang on one sec here. I think I've got an audio problem. There we go. That's my fault. Sorry. Let's go to another story, Crystal. The oil and gas, as I was saying, a well drilling sector is lobbying for federal funding to help the industry decarbonize. What are the details of this story?
Yeah, so the Canadian Association of Energy Contractors says the industry wants access to a tax credit aimed at helping businesses reduce emissions. So the oil and gas industry is the largest source of emissions in the country, and it is under pressure to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as part of Canada's commitment to reaching net zero by 2050. Now, companies that use carbon capture are being promised a tax credit. And, the technology allows greenhouse gases to be sequestered underground. But the well drilling sector says the tax credit is aimed at only oil producers. So drillers say they could use it to transition to electric equipment and invest in battery energy storage systems. The clean energy manufacturing tax credit hasn't been legislated yet, but it is intended to cover 30% of a company's costs for new machinery and equipment used to manufacture or process clean technologies. And the association says those same rigs that, are used for drilling oil and natural gas can be used to drill wells for emerging industries such as the lithium and helium sectors. Now, the group forecasts the drilling sector will employ more than 39,000 people next year. But just to note, Marcy, a recent report from the International Energy Agency is warning against excessive expectations and reliance on carbon capture. It says hitting climate targets set with the Paris Agreement would require an inconceivable 32 billion tons of emissions to be sequestered by carbon capture by 2050.
Yeah, that's an inconceivable number for sure. You're right. For your final story, before we look at more numbers, markets, a 3-year cruise that got a lot of media attention for prices that rivaled regular living expenses, I understand has now been canceled.
Yeah, that's right. So Life at Sea Cruises says it has no ship. So the cruise was originally set to depart from Turkey at the start of the month. That was postponed and relocated to Amsterdam. Some of the passengers had already gone to Turkey ahead of the original departure date and are stuck there now. Others say they have already rented or sold their homes and have nowhere to return to. And most have spent tens of thousands of dollars and now face months to get their money back. The company says it's going to make repayments in monthly installments starting in December, going to February. And the company says it planned on buying a ship that was retired this summer by another company, but another company ended up buying it. The cruise line said in a video to passengers that it's not a big enough company to afford a $40 or $50 million ship, but it had presented the project to investors and had approval from some to buy the vessel. And then the company says it did make a down payment, but then investors declined to support further due to unrest in the Middle East. But Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, a week after the ship sale was originally supposed to have gone through.
What's going on in the markets?
In Europe, markets are starting the week slightly lower as oil and gas stocks dip. Germany, the UK, and France are all down. In Asia, markets are declining as property stocks plunge. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all down. Oil is down 85 cents to 74.68 US per barrel. Gold is up at $12.30 to $2,015.30 US per ounce. And the dollar is up slightly 0.01 of a cent to 73.35 cents US.
All right, Crystal, sorry. I just coughed in your face. I didn't have my mic muted. I'm winning the business report this morning. It's a good thing you're here daily.
It's all good, Marcy.
Have a good rest of your Monday.
Thanks, you too.
Take care. That is Crystal Ramlakan joining us via Zoom with our business news this morning. She is here every morning at this time. 6:43 a.m., minus 14 in Winnipeg. Partly cloudy. Will be around minus 9 for the day. And so that's Winnipeg, Brandon, and Dauphin. I think we're all at the same daytime high today, minus 9. Colder up in Thompson, where the high is minus 15. Yeah, all across the south here, we're looking for minus 9s. If you need us in traffic, 788-3093. Maybe you're already out and about. Maybe you're in your truck on the back roads, enjoying the wilderness. That's often how trucks are marketed to us. You probably have noticed that in commercials. They're driving on the back roads instead of on actual roads, trucks. It's something that grabbed the attention, though, of a consumer watchdog in the UK. Recently, that country's Advertising Standards Authority banned a Toyota ad on the grounds that they depict the use of the vehicles in a manner that disregards the impact on the environment. All of it got CBC's Blair Sanderson to take a closer look at how pickup trucks are marketed.
This is sound from the ad that was banned in the UK. It opens with an aerial shot of an open plain with hundreds of pickup trucks racing across it as though they were a herd of antelope.
One of nature's true spectacles.
We then cut to these Toyotas traversing a river, water splashing as they go.
New Toyota Hilux. Born to roam.
And all of this triggered a complaint by a group called Ad Free Cities that argued the commercial condones behavior that's harmful to the environment. The UK's Advertising Standards Authority says Toyota countered, saying the commercial was designed to demonstrate the vehicle's capabilities that would be of genuine interest to farmers, forestry workers, and park rangers. But the consumer watchdog said those groups were not represented in the ad and sided with the complainant.
Well, I think it's about time the auto industry has been advertising reckless use of off-road vehicles, for decades. And I think
Richard Campbell is an advocate for safer roads and a greener environment. He runs a website called acturgently.org. He's long called for tougher regulations on pickup trucks and SUVs, citing their ever-growing size and danger they pose to pedestrians and smaller vehicles on the road.
Starting to get people to question and think about that, and certainly having more responsible messages in advertising that encourage safer uses of vehicles and really inform drivers of the costs to the environment and other people.
A man will ask a lot of his truck.
Pickup truck commercials have become almost cliché in their depiction of masculinity on four wheels. That's according to Sarah Wilner, a professor of marketing at Wilfrid Laurier University. She says most people who buy pickup trucks don't drive them up steep rocky mountains or through cavernous ravines. So why show that in the ads?
Well, primarily because it's not a particularly sexy prospect to show somebody driving to work and commuting every day and driving through a Tim Hortons to pick up their coffee. That's not the kind of lifestyle we want to depict our brand in. What we want to see is a lifestyle that people aspire to, a life of adventure and curiosity and finding new and unexplored places. And that's what they want to see themselves in, even if the reality is much more mundane.
Excuse me. Hi. To find out what actual pickup truck drivers think, I hit up a Walmart parking lot.
What kind of truck is this?
GMC Sierra.
I see.
This is Shelley Albee. I show her the ad in question.
Here you go. Ready?
The truck can do that, but I just wouldn't drive it in the water like that. I can't think of a situation I'd be in that I'd have to drive it like that. But I mean, if you want to, I'm sure it could.
Exactly one parking spot over in another pickup truck is Tammy Conrad.
How about you, ma'am? Do you ever take this truck off-road, up mountains, off cliffs, that kind of thing?
Off cliffs? Yeah, I do, actually.
What do you do with your truck?
I haul horses with it. I drive it to work every day. I throw my kayaks in it.
So when you see those ads with the trucks doing all that stuff, do you identify with that then? You're like, yeah, that's me.
Totally.
But what about Canada's own advertising watchdog? The group Ad Standards has weighed in on this topic. It says commercials that encourage unsafe behavior or unlawful behavior, including laws that protect environmentally sensitive areas, could be in violation of the Ad Standards Code of Conduct. But in a written statement, the group's CEO did not say if any complaints of this kind have been filed. For CBC Radio, I'm Blair Sanderson.
You want to weigh in on this? 788-3205. How do you use your truck in Manitoba? In case you're wondering, by the way, the number one selling vehicle in Canada this year was a pickup truck, the Ford F-Series. CarAndDriver.com reports more than 500,000 were sold in the first 3 quarters of 2023. The number 2 and 3 selling vehicles are also pickup trucks, and there sure is a lot of talk right now about e-trucks also. 788-3205 if you want to weigh in.
It's a wonderful time of year. A season worth celebrating, a season of giving, a season for kindness. Let's make the season kind for those in need. December 1st, CBC is devoting a day of programming in support of Harvest Manitoba. Music, stories, and giving. Make the season kind. Visit cbc.ca/BeKindMB for details.
So join us on Friday. That is the day for Make the Season Kind, all day long in support of Harvest Manitoba. Live musicians and choirs and individual singer-songwriters and all kinds of performers will be here performing live on CBC. It's always a special show. Looking forward to that. And also to really getting a sense of how much is needed out there this year. I came from doing one of the stories at Harvest. I was sitting in their call center. So we have had change in our community. You just have to look around to see that. A lot of people struggling out there. So if you have it to help and you have it in you to give, rather, you want to join us on Friday. Coming up in this morning show after 7 o'clock, sugar strike. I know that this has been ongoing for weeks. Heather was mentioning it in the news. It could be close to an end, but there's still no sugar on some of the shelves of Winnipeg stores. I know at my grocery store yesterday, they still had the sign up and no sugar in sight. We talked to some bakers in the province about how they're feeling now with December 1st knocking on the door in the holiday season. So stay tuned. We'll have that story for you in the next hour of the show. In addition, in the next hour, we have the I-Team that is going to be in studio. Caroline Bargood of the I-Team will join us. You may have been hearing in the news that a Winnipeg man who was deemed incapable of caring for himself says he's going to lose his house unless he gets out from under the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba. So as I mentioned, the I-Team's Caroline Bargood will be here at 10 to 8 to talk about how he got here and more details of his story and also what he's doing to get out. So stay tuned. That's coming up at 10 to 8. I'm Marcy Markusa. You are with CBC. I want to mention one more thing before I'm done making mentions. And this one's a biggie. I'm going to mention it every hour. We're going to be out and about live on Wednesday morning. Last week, you were calling us about Arlington Bridge. The city shut it down, and it's shut down now at least till February. They're going to be doing reassessment then. So you can't use that bridge to go north-south. So on Wednesday, we're going to talk about it in some more detail when we're live in the North End. So we're going to a classic spot. We're hitting up Luda's. Haven't been there in years. Looking forward to it. Owner Tracy Conapata is going to open up a little early for us. So if you want to join us at Luda's Deli on Wednesday morning, it is at 410 Aberdeen, and we hope you can come down. The coffee will be on. City Councillors Santos and Edie will be there as well. We'll have some historic analysis of Aberdeen, how we got here, and then we'll also talk about where we go next. But the heart of the story is you. If you use that bridge, if this will impact your life or your family's life, please consider joining us at Luda's on Wednesday morning, 410 Aberdeen, or you can call us at 788-3205 and weigh in and share your story there if you can't make it in person. Well, it has certainly been a tense and emotional week in Israel-Gaza and the West Bank. Families have been welcoming home Israeli hostages released by Hamas. Palestinians have been reunited with women and teen Palestinian detainees released from Israeli prisons. All of it's been happening because of the temporary truce between Israel and Hamas. Now, the agreement is scheduled to end today. For more on all of this, Ronan Levine is with us. He's a professor of political science at University of Toronto. Good morning.
Good morning.
So for people that haven't been tuned into the news already this morning, where are we at? We have another group expected today, right?
Right. So the first phase of the agreement called for 50 hostages being held by Hamas to be released back to Israel in exchange for a 4-day ceasefire. So we're in day 4, and Israel is expecting that 11 hostages will be released. But this is only the first phase. If Hamas releases and provides a list of names of 10 hostages to be released tomorrow, then the ceasefire will extend. But at the moment, this is one of these like mornings where it's like, good thing you take your blood pressure medication. There is some reports that there is a hitch, that there is dispute. The Qatari mediators are shuttling between the two sides, that the reports are saying that there are issues with the list of names. And there's conflicting reports as to exactly what those issues are. Either it has to do with families being separated, that not the entire family is being released, which, according to the original agreement, that wasn't supposed to happen, or that the babies, which have not yet been released, who are currently being held hostage, are not on this list of 11. There may be a silver lining, though, in that if the babies are not being released today, that may be a signal that Hamas is serious about extending the ceasefire, and at least one of those babies will hopefully be released from captivity tomorrow.
What scenes, Ronan, stayed with you over the weekend around the witnesses being released? Around the hostages being released?
Oh, it's just been tremendous scenes that have been filling social media and really filling my heart with joy. For me personally, 2 of the children that were released over these last 2 days are like exactly the same age as one of my children. And to see them reunited with their fathers were just so emotional for me. But at the same time, it's like, I want to participate in this joy, especially after these 6 weeks of pain and suffering that we've been witnessing with the war. Like, I want to be part of that joy. I want to see that joy. But at the same time, if it was me, I'd kind of want it to be private and personal. I'm not sure I want the whole world to be watching me hug my child for the first time in 6 weeks. So, part of me is like, I want to look away. But at the same time, I know I'm part of this. I want to see what's happening. I want to be part of the joy. I want to see the jubilation on their faces.
8 trucks were getting into Gaza over the weekend because of this temporary ceasefire here, this break, delivering medicine, food, and fuel. What's the latest on that effort?
Well, it seems at the moment both sides have been pleased with the pace of supplies coming in. Of course, Israel wants to make sure that these trucks include cucumbers, diapers, and cheese, and not anything that might be used in military efforts against Israel. It may not be going quite fast enough, but that's also in large part because the need is so great. And this, again, there may be a silver lining that this may be clear indications why the ceasefire may continue, because there is still clearly so much of a need to bring more aid in. There was a hiccup, though, over the weekend. The release of the hostages on Saturday was delayed several hours, and it appears to have stemmed from a dispute over whether or not enough aid trucks were getting into the northern part of the Gaza Strip, not just the Strip itself. Both sides blame the other for not allowing more in. In the northern part of the Strip is where the Israeli military is operating and where they've asked all civilians to evacuate. But that issue seems to have been resolved, and that does not seem to be the issue yesterday or today.
Thank you very much for the analysis. World Report's coming up with the very latest as well, and any details that have changed in the last hour as we're watching closely this morning. Thank you very much for your analysis.
Yeah, hopefully we'll continue to see some peace. My apologies for the car honking in the background.
Live radio, no worries. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Renan Levine is a professor of political science at the University of Toronto, and the car honking is courtesy of Toronto. In Winnipeg so far, traffic so far so good across Manitoba. Not getting calls on our traffic traffic commute line. But if you do need to reach us this Monday morning at 3 minutes to 7, 788-3093. The weather in a moment. Headlines now with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, Winnipeg police are still on the scene of a house on Langside after an early Sunday morning shooting claimed the lives of 4 people. Police had said yesterday 3 people had died, a man and a woman remaining critical. But the family of the woman telling CBC News late last night she too has now passed away. Constable Jason Mikulishin says no arrests have been made. A Winnipeg man who was deemed incapable of caring for himself says he's going to lose his house unless he gets out from under the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba. We're going to hear his story from the CBC I-team in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Minus 14 in Winnipeg right now, partly cloudy. Today will be around minus 9 with a mix of sun and cloud. But with wind chill, it'll feel like minus 24 at points this morning. So bundle up and be prepared for that. Right now it is, as mentioned, minus 14 degrees. But could feel a lot colder if your skin's exposed. So make sure you don't forget the mitts today. In the next hour of the show, a sugar strike that has been ongoing for weeks and still is affecting some stores, might be taking the sweetness out of the holidays for some bakers in Manitoba. We'll hear from one of them. In addition, we'll have more on that I-team investigation and report, that Heather Wells just mentioned. And we'll take you to Fort Richmond, where we'll hear from 2 local coffee shop owners who can't believe their store, they say, has been robbed twice in 1 month. Stay tuned. We'll hear more about what's been happening in that part of Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Markusa. This is CBC. Stay with us.
On the current. Typically, rent banks provide one-time loans or grants to help people pay their rent just for a month or 2.
Rent in this country has gone up dramatically, and many Canadians are having trouble covering the costs. Rent banks are a solution, providing emergency funding and keeping people from being evicted. We'll talk about how some cities are trying to help coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. From CBC News, I'm Marcia Young. Canada's housing advocate says governments have neglected Inuit housing for too long. The full extent of the problem in Labrador and Nunavut will be revealed later this morning. The advocate's full report will be released in Ottawa, but the CBC's Ariana Kelland has already had a first-hand look at the housing crisis. She spoke to Inuit in Nain, Labrador.
I actually punched a hole in here before to let it brook right into a bucket.
The ceiling of Kenneth Dicker's home sags. The 67-year-old widower says his needs are simple and downplays the severity of the grey and black mold that hangs over his head.
I said it's livable anyway. It is livable, yeah, for me.
In Nain, there is nowhere to buy a bucket of tar, gallon of paint, or piece of plywood. You need money and means. That's just one of the glaring problems highlighted in a new report by Canada's housing advocate, Marie-Josée Houle.
Inuit in the north are in crisis.
For decades, Nain has been faced with overcrowding, hidden homelessness, and dilapidated dwellings.
A lot of the crises that Inuit are facing around housing is due to neglect, broken promises on behalf of governments.
Nain's housing dilemma can be traced back to the forced relocation of Inuit from Hebron, a community hundreds of kilometers to the north in the 1950s. It created overcrowding and social problems that persist today. Nain's Anglocock, or Mayor, Joe Dicker.
We have to take it seriously. We have to do something about it now.
The housing advocate agrees. In consultation with Inuit governments, Houle has made a number of recommendations, including an urgent call for coordination of all levels of government to increase access to funding and supplies. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, Nain, Labrador.
Today is the final day of the 4-day humanitarian pause in Gaza, but negotiators are working for an extension. While that work goes on, another 11 Israeli hostages are due to be freed today in exchange for more than 30 Palestinians being held in Israeli jails. Margaret Evans has the latest from Jerusalem.
A sound of relief as one more group of Israeli hostages was reported back in Israel late yesterday, cheered across the country, especially by survivors in the communities from where Hamas killed and kidnapped its victims on October 7th. Iftak Zelnicka is from Kibbutz Be'eri.
I think it was
literally the first moment of happiness that we had here for a long, long time.
14 other members of his community are still believed held hostage. This is the last of a 4-day agreed pause to allow for exchanges between hostages held by Hamas and Palestinians held in Israeli jails. But talk of an extended truce continues to surface. Last-minute differences over the agreed names on today's exchange lists highlight the tenuous nature of it all.
I've never seen the scale before, the destruction.
UNICEF's James Elder, inside Gaza, says there must be a longer break in fighting to ease the suffering of Palestinians there.
And the people, they just bear the marks of immense distress, of trauma, street after street, reduced to rubble.
The pause has allowed for a greater volume of aid trucks to enter the Gaza Strip, but NGOs say it's far from enough. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to resume fighting against Hamas with full force when the pause ends. But most analysts agree pressure to secure the release of still more hostages will be enormous. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Montreal police are investigating an attack on a Jewish community council building. A statement from the group says in the early hours this morning, a Molotov cocktail was thrown at the door of the building. A window was also broken. Officials say no one was hurt. Police are reviewing security camera footage and looking for anyone who may have witnessed the event. Victims of historical sexual assault want some changes to the way plaintiffs are treated. Survivors tell CBC they've been re-traumatized during civil proceedings. As Julie Ayrton reports, there are calls for a trauma-informed approach. And a warning, some listeners may find details in this story upsetting.
It's very hard. It is a re-victimization in itself.
Rosemary Anderson describes her civil lawsuit against the Catholic Church. She was sexually assaulted by a priest in Kamloops, BC. She won her case, but she says it was a cruel process.
And then there were things that happened in the trial that were just unreal.
She found out there were other victims. That was upsetting, but she says not for the reason insinuated by the church's lawyer.
Well, he says, let me put it to you. You were upset because you were jealous. Like, really? And he was allowed to get away with that.
CBC spoke to other abuse victims who sued. One survivor was just 12 when he was sexually assaulted by 2 priests in Ottawa. A lawyer for the church repeatedly asked him if he had been aroused during the abuse. Toronto defense lawyer Carol Jenkins says sometimes she has to ask tough questions.
But in my view, that doesn't need to be done with bravado or in an aggressive manner, which can exacerbate the trauma.
Jenkins and others in the legal community say more education is needed. Myrna McCallum is a Vancouver lawyer. She produces the Trauma Informed Lawyer podcast.
Throughout law school and the bar course, never once did we talk about people, trauma, empathy, humanity. We talked about legal issues. Doesn't matter if people get hurt.
But McCallum says the system can be fixed, and she's organizing a conference called Justice as Trauma, set for next spring. Julie Ayrton, CBC News, Ottawa.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is expected to put her controversial Sovereignty Act into action today. She says she will use the law to shield Alberta power companies from the federal government's proposed clean electricity regulations. Here's Smith speaking Saturday on her radio show, Your Province, Your Premier.
So we have been trying to work collaboratively with them on aligning their targets with our targets, which are 2050. I think that there's a lot of reason to believe that our power generators would be able to get to 2050, but they cannot get to 2035. We will not put our operators at risk of going to jail if they do not achieve the targets that have been set, which we believe are unachievable.
Sources familiar with the plan say Smith will declare Ottawa's plan to slash grid emissions unconstitutional, and she will put forward legislation that spells out ways the regulations will not be enforced in Alberta. More than 66,000 teachers in Quebec's French elementary and secondary schools are still on strike. They have walked off the job. They did that last week. The strike is affecting about 40% of Quebec students. Maud Polender says teachers like her want better working conditions.
You go into education to make a difference, and if you can't make a difference in your day-to-day teaching, then you feel like a failure, and it's not a good feeling.
The president of Quebec's Treasury Board is asking the teachers' union to be flexible. She says the government cannot agree to demands like smaller class sizes until the province finds solutions to the labor shortage. It is a commonly prescribed chemotherapy drug that can save lives, but it can also be toxic and deadly to some cancer patients. Now, Canada's healthcare system is being urged to do more to avoid tragedies. Rosa Marcatelli from our Go Public unit looks into who is most at risk.
When Anil Kapoor was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, his family was hopeful treatment would buy him several more years. But 3 weeks after his first and only dose, the 58-year-old was dead, killed by the chemotherapy drug, according to doctors. Akshay Kapoor is his son.
We were robbed of time together.
Kapoor was given the commonly prescribed chemo drug fluorouracil, called 5-FU. But after he died, a test showed he carried one of many genetic variants that can make the treatment toxic. Stephen Offer is a genetic researcher.
These patients are dying because of their treatment.
Some provinces, like Quebec and Ontario, where Kapoor lived, routinely pre-screen cancer patients for genetic differences that can make 5-FU toxic. Anil Kapoor was tested and got the all clear. Experts say when decisions were made on which variants are most common, they were based on medical studies which mostly neglected racialized populations. It's unknown if Kapoor's genetic variant is more common in people of South Asian ancestry.
We know less about which of the variants that they may carry.
So why don't provinces do wider tests? Some say there isn't enough research to say they should. But BC does just that. Instead of testing for 4 genetic variants, it pre-screens for 6 after studying Vancouver's diverse population. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Markusa. Thanks for joining us on CBC. This is Information Radio, live in downtown Winnipeg. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app. This hour on the program, we're going to take you out to Fort Richmond, where 2 coffee shop owners say there's an issue. They both say they can't believe they've been robbed for the second time this month. They want some answers, and we'll hear more. CBC's Jim Agapito visited them to see what's going on in the neighborhood. In addition, this hour on the show, a recent strike makes it difficult for some Manitobans to get sugar on the shelves. We're going to hear from a local chocolatier about how it's affecting their business. This has been ongoing for weeks. I know at my local grocer, there was still no sugar on the shelves over the weekend. And at 7:50, an I-Team investigation, a Winnipegger who was placed under the control of the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba is warning others that this could easily happen to them. He's been fighting for the past year to get control of his own life, he says. We'll hear from the I-Team about it at about 10 to 8. 7:11 a.m. right now on your Monday morning. Heather Wells is in with our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, some people who live on Langside say they are afraid of crime growing in their neighborhood, getting too close for comfort. 4 people are dead after a West Broadway shooting early Sunday. Police had said yesterday 3 people died and a man and woman were still critical. The family of the woman telling CBC News late last night she too has passed away. Constable Jason Mikulishin says no arrests have been made. If you normally take the bus around the city, you may need some extra time today. The City of Winnipeg warning of possible transit delays today as the Union for Transit Workers steps up job action. Our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, that story in the news this morning about transit and possible delays, you filled our listener line last week about what already is a system that is affecting your life in not a good way. We'll get to some listener lines in just a moment on that issue. So right now, though, let's go to Pat to find out quick about weather traffic.
Well, if you're waiting for a bus this morning, as Heather said, it might be delayed a little bit, but a little bit chilly this morning. Minus 14 right now in the city of Winnipeg, a minus 19 wind chill. Not as bad as Thompson, where it's minus 24 with a minus 29 wind chill. And Brandon, you're minus 13. On the way to a minus 9 today. I will mention that we are going to get to a minus 9 today as well. Thompson, you're going to get to a daytime high of minus 15. Warmer tomorrow, though, everywhere. So we have this minus 9 here in Winnipeg today for a daytime high. And we will see a mix of sun and cloud. We're got a a little bit of clearing skies above us. We will see that more when the sun rises this morning at 7:59 and sets at 4:33. And tonight we'll dip down to a -18, so chilly, but then we warm up. A +2 tomorrow, and then overnight lows the next couple of nights are just -5. Wednesday, we see a 3 for a daytime high in Winnipeg. So mix of sun and cloud tomorrow, chance of flurries in the morning, but a 3 in the sunshine on Wednesday. And then a -1 Thursday, -3 on Friday. So from a temperature point of view, not the deep freeze that we could see at this time of year. I will mention once again, we're -14. Traffic is pretty quiet this morning. Got that light dusting of snow yesterday morning, a couple of centimeters that took away my green grass and made it all white now. But as far as the commute goes, pretty straightforward. Streets are pretty much dry and clear. If you do see anything though, 788-3093 is a traffic and commuter line. Let me know if anything's shaken out there, everyone.
Well, last week, what was shaken is a lot of people talking about transit. As we mentioned, we were exploring the issues all week about what it is really like to be on the bus. We heard from one user who is legally blind who said she can still, even with her cane, and she said she's walking slow. She can get somewhere quicker than if she catches the bus. She walks. Some of that is also because she says buses still pass by when they're full. Now, we know some of the things that are going on. There's transit challenges out there. There's a bus driver shortage impacting how many buses are on the road. There's a lack of routes going to the outskirts of the ever-expanding city. But still. So let's hear a few more calls, and then I'll let you know where you can hear from a city councillor on this. Here's some more calls on transit.
My name is Tony. My question in regards to transit for the city of Winnipeg is why, over the years, have we not been able to develop a north-south, east-west LRT line with transit buses being offshoots to service areas to run more frequently? Our city cannot handle more expansion. We don't have the infrastructure. And if our electorals want us to park and ride, it has to be made more accessible and more efficient.
Hi, my name is Lori. I am calling about the lack of proper transit from South Winnipeg to Vincent Massey Collegiate, period. I have a student who just started high school, and we actually chose a different high school, and large in part was because of poor transit to Vincent Massey Collegiate. It takes 2 to 3 buses for students from South Winnipeg to get to their catchment high school, which is mind-boggling to me. When I was growing up in the 90s, bus service was actually better when they had the 62 Richmond Express and the 60 Pembina Express. One bus going all the way down Pembina or straight into St. Norbert. Now that doesn't exist because of the rapid transit line, and I just think it was such a huge oversight to leave a huge high school off of the list, especially when all other South End high schools have accommodations such as school charters and better bus routes in general. And if they don't have better bus routes, they actually have school charters that people pay for through Winnipeg Transit. Vincent Massey does not have this. It's very disappointing that things have actually gotten worse since the 90s than they are today for those students. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you. It really speaks to the depth of the issues and the complexities and the layers of complexities and the funding challenges for transit systems in our city when you start hearing how full the listener lines were right away. So thank you for the calls. 788-3205. By the way, so Friday, Janice Lukes was on the show, City Councillor for Waverley West, Chair of Winnipeg's Public Works Committee. She spoke to some of the issues with transit and also looking at how we got here as well. So some of that was in an interview that Pat did on Friday's show. You can find it on our CBC YouTube channel, CBC Manitoba YouTube channel online, or on the CBC Listen app. 7:17 is the time right now, and up next, for the second time this month, Coffee Culture Cafe and Eatery in Fort Richmond has been broken into. Co-owner Parmjeet Singh is in disbelief.
If this happens again, I'm ready to wind up this business. I'll close the business and I'll leave this city and this country. It's very strange feeling that we came to this country with an idea that we'll be safe, secured, and we'll work, we'll be happy. Here, nothing like that is happening. Every time we face this kind of issue, and we are disappointed to the extent that we are ready to wind up.
That's Coffee Culture Cafe and Eatery co-owner Parmjeet Singh speaking to CBC's Jim Agapito. Now, his wife, Sandeep Meharadarada, spoke to Jim as well about what happened.
Yeah, November's not been a good month for us. We had a break-in on November 5th. That was at 6 a.m. in the morning. And we got a call from a security company that there seems to be a motion inside. And I wasn't even aware of how to deal with it, and I thought they're going to take it up with the police. But on the way here, we called up the cops to ask them if they knew, and they said no, and they told us, do not go, we're coming. We waited outside for a couple of hours and nobody turned up. At around 11:30, 12, we came in and there was POS, our cash tills, high-end camera, laptop, a couple of things were taken, including cash, our cash float from both the tills were taken from here. And there was a lot of mess around, glass broken, shattered everywhere. It was very upsetting seeing all that, and obviously the fear factor of who has done it and why has this been done. Our business has been targeted for such a thing. We waited yet for the police to come, and in fact I called them up again to remind them that there's been nobody here, and what if the person was inside yet and could be armed. And they said, oh, we're coming. Nobody turned up. Then I did get a call, I think the next day or maybe then, that they can, take it up with us on a video call. We did that. Today I got the report number for that case. And then today in the morning at 4:20 or 4:25, we again got a call, and my first thought was not again. No way. This time I insisted that you call the police before you, and they said the security company was trying to, tell me, no, we always call the first responder. I said, no, you need to call them, and which of course they did. And my husband and my son reached here within 10 minutes of the incident happening. The police were also here by then, and they came in, but the person just took 3 minutes because we checked up we have a video footage of all that, and we saw him dragging the safe, which was more than 25 kilos, and took it because our video coverage is only till our vestibule. And the police, of course, they're saying that they're investigating the case, and hopefully they'll get to the bottom of it. And what scares us is that we have our staff coming in early morning, we open till late night, and you don't want to do a business in any place in which you fear for your business, your life, your property. That's not what we've come here. And we actually started our business during the pandemic, and we thought the worst is over, but clearly it is not. Now we're dealing with safety issues.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, I feel violated. I feel absolutely violated. I feel this should be taken up with more sincerity, and it should make us feel safe. If all businesses, like our small businesses, start fearing the fact that, there's going to be a break-in, it doesn't work for us. We have come to Winnipeg. We immigrated here in 2019 with the hope that we're going to be in a very safe and secure city. Clearly, we made a mistake. It feels like that now.
The fact that this happened to you for a second time.
I did not let this thought come up till now, but we've had a lot of guests walk in today, and they have told me, think about it with that angle, that you came in, you invested out here, you're definitely not from here. And I am wondering if maybe they have some truth in it. It's not a very pleasant thought. And I try to, keep it at the back of my mind.
You mentioned the police and the response. I'm wondering, what have they said to you?
Oh, I kind of lost faith in the system. We tried to connect with the local MLA out here. We did everything from our side to be able to have somebody respond and give us answer, or even tell us that there is investigation going on. And when we saw nobody even turned up at this place, it didn't make us feel very nice. It didn't make our staff feel safe. And we have around 20 staff working for us. And these are all young people. That means every morning we come with them just to give them that confidence that this was just one odd day. But clearly, this was not just one odd day. It's happened the second time with us.
What do your customers think?
They are wondering, what is it that, if it's just for a couple of $100 or for, let's say, even $6,000-$7,000, It's not worth trying to break in. If one case is caught by the police at the right time, that clearly sends a message out. And that's what our guests have been telling us, that we don't see this happening. Oh, this is typical Winnipeg. Break-ins happen and they are not followed up.
Have you had a chance to talk to some of the businesses around you, and what do they think?
Oh, we had a chance to talk to a lot of businesses. In fact, even in this strip mall, there are at least 3 or 4 which have doors boarded. Clearly shows that this has now become a very common thing out here. A lot of small businesses in South Winnipeg are now getting targeted.
What would you like done to prevent this from happening again?
More security, more police presence, a fear set in so that the thieves do not feel they can just get in. We have every security system in place, but they don't fear all that.
CBC's Jim Agapito was out talking there to Coffee Culture Cafe and Eatery co-owner Sandeep Mahendirata. We reached out to Winnipeg Police for comment about what happened out in Fort Richmond at their place, broken into twice in 1 month. And they did confirm the break-ins on November 5th and 23rd. We asked more about the long response time that was the owners felt was a long response time to the first break-in on November 5th. And a spokesperson for the police told us that the call to police was made more than an hour after the break-in, and there was little chance of catching a suspect in the act. That reduced the call's priority in the system. Police were called within minutes of the alarm going off of the 23rd, and therefore they say the call had a much higher priority and police responded much more quickly. So that is the responses to the break-ins there. What is happening in the city? If you have something to weigh in on, we'd love to hear from you. I know that when we were trying to book locations recently, as recent as this week, in the city for being out and about live at different restaurants. 2 restaurants in Winnipeg, one of them said to me, if you come that early, you're going to just find people breaking in, even for things as innocuous as a vacuum cleaner, because they see it through the window. Another person actually said straight up to me, cafe owner, longtime eatery in Winnipeg, said that they changed their hours. They open later now because of crime in their area of the city. Now, both of those were in the West End and the North End. Down on Fort Richmond, though, you might recall during the election that we were at the Tim Hortons, one of the locations down very close to Coffee Culture, who we just heard from. And we were at the Tim's there. Nasli Sharma, who's with Tim's, talked about trying to engage with the city on creating some kind of a biz district maybe that could help with security, because right now individuals or, businesses are trying to deal with it themselves, but they also had some incidents. Nasli herself had shared on the air that she was assaulted at one point. So something is changing in that part of the neighborhood. That's what we're hearing from people in that neighborhood. So weigh in if you want, 788-3205, especially if you're down in Fort Richmond specifically. It's time for morning sports at 7:25, -14 Monday morning, and Scott Regeres here. Hello.
Hey there, Marcy.
So let's get started with the road trip that the Jets were on. Not the end that they were looking for, the end of this.
No, a 3-2 loss to Nashville, although at least the Jets made it interesting near the closing stages of the game. Josh Morrissey and Cole Perfetti scoring to keep it closer than it might have been. But I think the big difference here was the goaltending. UC Saros, one of the league's best when he's on his game, and he was last night for the Predators, stopping 32 of 34 Winnipeg shots. By contrast, Laurent Brossoit, not great. At one point in the game, Laurent let in 3 goals on 4 shots. Still, the team is happy with how they are playing at the moment. Here is Cole Perfetti.
As a whole, so far this season, we're playing some really, really, really good hockey, and the competes there, the battles there. Even tonight, we were working hard. Just, sometimes, things didn't go our way tonight, but, we come with that intensity. We have so much skill, so much talent, and such good players on this team that if we play with that urgency every night, we're a top team in the city. So, I think we feel really good where we're at right now.
Yeah, Winnipeg's currently in a playoff spot, 3rd in the Central Division, Marcy. Historically speaking, over 3/4 of teams in a playoff season at this point, in a playoff spot at this point in the season, go on to qualify for the postseason. So that's good news. Next up, a matchup at home to Dallas and a chance to surpass the Stars in the standings.
Let's go to another story. The PanAm Games wrapped up over the weekend, and lots of good news for Canada. What's the overall picture of how the country did?
Well, I quite well. The 52 medals Canadians won placed them 6th among all nations, Marcy. This is the same placing Canada had at the last pair of PanAms 4 years ago. But this Canadian team is much younger. Close to half of the athletes were making their first appearance at a multi-sport games, which of course bodes well for Canada at next summer's Paralympics in Paris. A Canadian that's expected to star in the French capital, Marcy, is Montreal's Alison Levine, a double gold medalist at these games. The boccia stalwart was named flag bearer for yesterday's closing ceremony and talked to reporters, not for the first time during these PanAms, about the bigger picture.
Just being in a village with other sports, with other people with disabilities. I love being the norm here. No one's staring at me. It's an amazing feeling to be so supported by not just your teammates that we travel with and compete with all the time, but the bigger Canadian team, and then even, Chileans. I was at the village yesterday and a random volunteer was like, "Are you Allison? Can I get a selfie?" And I was just like, that's not going to happen at home. That's amazing,
That's Alison Levine, who before boccia was split into men's and women's divisions a couple of years ago, Marcy, was the first female player to be ranked number 1 in the world in her category. And she is sure to be one of the athletes who will be considered for opening ceremony flag-bearing duty at the Paralympics next August. You can read all about Canada's performance at the PanAms in Chile, though, on our website right now.
Let's switch to basketball, before you go. The Raptors' up and down season really continues, I guess.
Yeah, and in yesterday's case, Marcy, a narrow loss in Cleveland was quite preventable. All Toronto needed to do was succeed at the free throw line. Instead, they shot 69% against the Cavaliers. And it's become a worrying trend for Toronto, which is the third worst team in the league from the line. Here's Coach Darko Rajakovic.
Free throws, not our friend. So we got to step on the line and make shots, and guys are really trying and putting work in. So I believe we'll be able to get it where we want to get it.
Under the new coach, the Raptors may be running completely different systems offensively and defensively, but the results remain much the same. Last season, Marcy, they finished at exactly 500, and this time around, they're one game under 500. But in both cases, Toronto's free throw shooting, as basic a skill as there is, has been near the bottom of the NBA, so they'll try to right that wrong tomorrow when they next play against Brooklyn.
All right, thanks very much, Scott.
You bet.
That's Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. He'll be back with us tomorrow. 7:25 a.m. is when you hear sports on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Markusa. Thanks for tuning in with us this Monday morning or watching on our YouTube channel. Great to be with you. Chilly out there. Just seeing someone watching the show, giving us a wave outside the window. And they're properly dressed, hat on, face fully covered, little toque up. Looks like maybe even double gloves. So it's just chillier than we've had. It's not to overstate it, but we'll have a high only of -9 today in the city of Winnipeg. Still ahead, more news on the sugar shortage that continues. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is -14 under a clear sky. And as Marcy mentioned, that high of -9. But tomorrow we do warm up above seasonal. Winnipeg police are still on the scene of a mass shooting in West Broadway early Sunday. 4 people are dead. Police had said yesterday 3 people died and a man and woman were critical. The family of the woman telling CBC News late last night she too has now passed away. Constable Jason Mikulishin says no arrests have been made.
The investigation, again, still in its early stages, and we're doing our very best to determine exactly what's taken place. I can't really comment on anything more than the gravity of what we're dealing with here.
Police were first called to Langside early Sunday morning. That's Langside between Sarah and Broadway. They are asking anyone with information, including video surveillance, to call the homicide unit or Crime Stoppers. Now, some people who live on Langside say they are afraid crime in the neighborhood is getting worse. Abdullah Al-Saim says he heard loud noises in the early hours of Sunday morning. He heard a car revving its engine, followed by what he thought was a woman crying loudly. Al-Saim says he doesn't feel safe.
I'm really scared. I just moved down here last month, but now I'm reconsidering, I might have to go somewhere else. This neighborhood is a little bit dangerous.
Angela Klassen at the West Broadway Bear Clan says the group will meet to discuss the possibility of stepping up patrols in the area. She and others say if police are able to make arrests, people in the area will feel safer. A Winnipeg man who was deemed incapable of caring for himself says he's going to lose his house unless he gets out from under the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargout has his story.
I've always looked after myself.
Last December, Paul Cameron Miller froze his feet when he went out for a walk to the drugstore and spent 6 months in hospital. By the time he was released, doctors diagnosed him with dementia and determined the 65-year-old could not care for himself, so he was placed under the care and control of the Public Guardian and Trustee of Manitoba, or PGT, nearly a year ago.
I want that year back. I want to live it my way.
His friend Chris Olofsson is trying to help him figure out a way to get out from under the public trustee so that he can make his own decisions with his house and finances.
When the PGT takes over, they take over everything, so that suddenly your identity is gone and you are no longer a person, and that's the way he's been treated recently.
Miller and Olofsson say since they told their story to CBC News, the public trustee has reached out to them and scheduled a meeting for today. They hope it will be a first step in getting Miller back out on his own. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Winnipeg.
If you normally take a bus around the city, you may need a little extra time today. The City of Winnipeg's warning of possible transit delays as the Union for Transit Workers steps up job action. The Amalgamated Transit Union has rejected the city's latest offer, citing unsafe working conditions and the high demand for overtime causing stress for transit operators. Today is the fourth and perhaps final day of a temporary truce between Israel and Hamas, and it is not clear if the deal will be extended. Israeli President Isaac Herzog spoke with CBC News last night.
I'm doubtful because it is clear that we must remove Hamas from leading and being able to employ terror against us from the Gaza Strip.
The militant group Hamas says it wants to continue the arrangement, which includes the release of hostages taken during the deadly October 7th raid into Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the current truce can be extended if Hamas releases 10 more hostages every day. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. If you've been looking for a bag of sugar, you're not alone. Workers at the Rogers Sugar Refinery in Vancouver have been on strike for nearly 2 months now. That has resulted in low supplies and higher prices at grocery stores across Western Canada. Jeremy Coley works at Food Fair on Portage. He has had to deal with a lot of puzzled customers.
Most of them are okay with it, but a lot of people get quite upset with you because Christmas is right around the corner, so they're kind of freaking out.
Coley says his store received a big shipment from the wholesaler and restocked their shelves yesterday. Rogers and its union agreed to mediation yesterday. The sticking points are wages, benefits, and a proposal from the company to increase operations to 24 hours a day, year-round. You can hear more on this story coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. Well, the Winnipeg Jets couldn't keep their win streak going.
It's Perfetti with a drive, he scores!
Cole Perfetti in the third period on TSN. As the Jets' win streak ends at 5, Winnipeg was beaten by Nashville 3-2 last night. Jets coach Rick Bowness says his team has to keep pushing.
Our 5-on-5 team game, for the most part, has been outstanding. It really has. And that's what's going to carry us through the next 20 games. And our special teams have to get better.
And that is it for this road trip. The Jets return home tomorrow for a key game against Dallas. Winnipeg and Dallas are now tied for second spot in the Central Division. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Pat.
It's Heather.
Oh, it is Monday.
It is Monday.
You know, I have a cold. Maybe my voice is a little deeper.
No, it's because we're this is full radio disclosure. When I'm rushed, I do that all the time, and we're really busy this half hour. Boy, oh boy.
And now we're taking up time talking about
it always happens, but we should, because I'm calling you Pat.
Nice.
Wow. All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
You're welcome.
Here's Pat.
Here I am, and I don't have much to say because we have a nice-looking sunrise, actually. We have a lot of cloud cover around the city, but throughout southern Manitoba, we're going to see clearing skies today. Daytime highs, -9 and -10s for the most part. We'll see a -9 here for Winnipeg. That's the coldest day for the next several. Here's the good news, folks, if you like warmer temperatures. -9 today, -18 tonight, a +2 tomorrow, a +3 Wednesday in the sunshine. Thursday, Friday, -1 and -3. And that's what Winnipeg Winnipeg is looking like. Brandon, minus 13 on the way to a minus 9. Same deal. And we'll have clearing skies in Brandon as well. And then Thompson, well, you're minus 24 with a minus 29 wind chill this morning, rising to minus 15. Tonight, dipping down to minus 24 again, but temperature rising to minus 16 by morning. And then tomorrow, maybe 2 to 4 centimeters of snow, but Thompson, a minus 8 tomorrow for a daytime high. So once again, looking at minus 9s and 10s for the most part. We're looking at a lot of minus 13s right now, except up in Churchill where you're minus 20 on the way to a minus 21. Once again, minus 14, clear skies in Winnipeg. In traffic, it's been a quiet one so far. 788-3093 is the traffic line to reach me. Let me know if there's anything hampering your commute on this Monday morning.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, let's return to the sugar shortage story. It has been on for weeks, a little bit of a glimmer of hope on the horizon, as you just heard in the news. But it's not just grocers that are feeling the pain. The Rogers Sugar Refinery in Vancouver, as we mentioned, has been on strike for 8 weeks now. And it affects all kinds of businesses across Western Canada, including bakers. Winnipegger chocolatier Constance Pop, a.k.a. Constance Menzies, spoke to CBC Radio Canada's Antoine Breyer about it.
Well, firstly, I'm glad that it's a strike issue and not a supply issue. I have gone to a few stores and I did buy 120 kilograms of white sugar. I wasn't able to find any brown sugar, and I was able to find some white sugar. I went to 3 different stores, and our supplier also doesn't have sugar for us.
What is your current situation regarding sugar in your shop?
We were running out of sugar, but I went and hoarded 120 kilograms of sugar. That will take us until the end of December. So hopefully this strike will be resolved, because with Valentine's coming and Festival de Voyageurs coming, we make a lot of sucre de crème. Like, we do make a lot of items that require a lot of brown sugar. And right now we have a small amount of brown sugar. We got some from Bulk Barn, but now they're all out. So I'm hoping the strike will be over, that we can replenish starting in maybe late December and for sure early January.
But there's also the fact that Christmas is coming,
Right.
and so this is a great period. And so does that affect specific items that you sell?
Because I knew about the strike, I already pre-bought sugar. So I started, I guess, stockpiling sugar. So we're good for the month of December. So we have enough sugar for all of our recipes with our log cakes, our macarons. Like we have just enough sugar to get us through, but I'm hoping the strike will resolve in the next couple of weeks, that we can purchase sugar by the end of December that will take us into January and February.
You said that you have enough for the month of December. After that, how long can you last?
Well, we won't have any sugar, so we'll see. I think they know that this is a baking season for everybody, for homes, for businesses. So I think that there's going to be a little bit of incentive and pressure for them to. Rogers doesn't want a backlash from consumers. Like, they also have to be mindful of that. So hopefully that will be an extra incentive for them to come to the table and negotiate for their workers. They've been around for 135 years, and I'm sure this is a long-standing issue with them and their labor force. But you don't do something like this at this time of year.
So how come this has so much impact on the current situation? Is there not sugar coming, I don't know, like from the United States or from the eastern part of Canada?
We are their customers, so they service the western provinces. So then we would look to find a whole other supplier that's not Rogers. It just seems that the stores are dominated by the Rogers brand, but we could get sugar from other brands. But that's going to cost us more money too, because now you're kind of importing sugar from other parts or from other brands. And so right now we usually have a ready supply from Rogers, and they've dominated all the stores and all the suppliers at this time. So
with this potential sugar shortage, which does not affect you for now, do you fear that if the situation may last too long, the prices may go up for the goods you sell to your clients?
I used to be able to buy sugar at a lesser rate. Like, usually sugar is fairly expensive to begin with. It used to be quite affordable, and then it got, in the last couple of years, a little bit more expensive. So now I'm starting to buy more sugar in bulk, just to try and capture some of the cheaper prices. But yes, I think that's a good point. Once their labor issues have resolved, there's still going to be a bit of a supply issue. There's going to be a bit of a lack of sugar in the market. So I'm wondering if they're thinking, to make up for it, they're going to increase the prices just to help their situation, because they're without income right now. So in order to counteract that, they may also raise their prices too. So then we'll have to modify our ingredients and our recipes here to accommodate. And great that they're doing this during our busiest time, Christmas, Valentine's. Why not wait until Easter? It's like do the whole season without sugar.
Do you hear from other bakeries in the community that they also having troubles with sugar?
Yes, that's right. But we're not at the point where we're asking each other for sugar yet. We're all in the same boat, and we all been kind of trying to get the sugar that we can right now. So I think because we're at the early stages of this, we're not in a desperate mode. But we'll see.
Well, some hope on the horizon, as you heard in the news this morning. It looks like there could be an agreement around the labor issue that has caused the challenges with sugar. That was CBC Radio-Canada's Antoine Briere speaking in Winnipeg with chocolatier Constance Pop, a.k.a. Constance Menzies. Wondering what you're noticing. I know where I was over the weekend, no sugar on the shelves still. Hopefully it'll improve this week, but it might already be affecting your holiday baking too.
Love the thrill of a real mystery? Then you'll love the podcasts available from CBC, like Brainwashed.
Their objective was to wipe my memory.
Evil by Design.
Peter Nygaard is the most prolific sexual offender to date.
Uncover Escaping NXIVM.
What is mind control? How is it possible that someone could control someone else's mind?
And Someone Knows Something.
There was a scream and they found my dad.
Listen to critically acclaimed true crime podcasts from CBC. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, unfortunately, we are talking about crime this morning because over the weekend, quite an incident in Winnipeg's West Broadway neighborhoods, a shooting that, as you likely have been following the details of, left now 4 people dead. That now confirmed by CBC. 4 dead and another person seriously injured. Police were called to the 100 block of Langside Street. This was just after 4 a.m. yesterday morning. Constable Jason McAlishan spoke with reporters outside a Winnipeg Police headquarters.
Approximately 4:05 a.m., General Patrol members from downtown, West District, North District, East District responded to the 100 block of Langside Street for the report of multiple injured people. Attending officers located 5 people with injuries consistent with being shot. An adult male and an adult female were pronounced deceased at the scene. 3 additional victims were located and transported to hospital in critical condition. 1 adult male transported to hospital has since succumbed to his injuries. An adult male and an adult female remain in hospital in critical condition. Just for clarity, we have 5 victims in this matter. We have 3 individuals who have been fatally injured, and we have 2 individuals still in hospital in critical condition. Members of our homicide unit are actively involved. The victims' identities are still being confirmed and notifications are pending. The Winnipeg Police Service Forensic Services Unit will be on scene for an extended period due to the gravity of this incident, and limited information is going to be provided today. However, further details are anticipated in the coming days. And once again, I'll just emphasize, anyone with information, please give us a call. All I can say is that we were called to this particular residence. I believe there's multiple suites within this residence. And as far as the individuals directly involved, we don't know yet. We don't know what their involvement, their association. There are a lot of questions that have yet to be answered.
That was Constable Jason McAlishan with the early details yesterday of the Winnipeg Police Service, of course, Jason McAlishan, talking to reporters outside police headquarters on a windy Sunday. Now, we already have an update from the information he was able to share in those first moments. We know this morning now that 4 people were killed in this incident and 1 person was injured. So as you heard, 5 people in total involved. CBC's Karen Pauls and Lauren Donnelly both had a chance to speak to residents in the area around where this happened. Again, the 100 block of Langside Street in Winnipeg, including Megan Goldenthal.
We just came out to walk our dog and seen it was taped off. The police, they told us to go around, tried asking what happened. They couldn't tell us. They just said to watch the news. And then I found out from a couple of bypassers, including someone from the press who had heard rumors. And yeah, and then I started reading the news. Turns out those rumors were true.
How concerning is that?
Pretty concerning. I really wasn't thinking anything of it at all. Just, things happen in this area especially. But then I found out it was a mass shooting, I guess you could say. And it is still something to be alert about, That's why I don't take my kids outside at night. I don't take them out real early. I don't go out alone. Like, I've lived in this area, I've lived in the North End, so I mean, you see it all over nowadays. It's not even specific areas. It doesn't really matter where you are.
Abdullah Al-Saim. So yesterday night I was up whole night. So at one point it was around around 4 to 5. So I heard someone was crying so loud. Before that, it was kind of bothering me to sleep because I keep my window open. It's too hot inside my room because of the heater. So I saw someone came with a racing car and he was just accelerating so it was making huge noise. So after 10-15 minutes it stopped. Then I heard someone was crying so loud. So I tried to look outside through my window. I didn't see anyone on the street because my apartment is at the corner. It kept going probably 30 minutes. Someone was crying. So that's all happened.
And what time did you say this happened?
It's it's gonna be around 4 to 4:30. I heard some ambulance noise, but it was around 4:30 because I slept at 5. I'm really scared. I just moved down here last month, but now I'm reconsidering I might have to go somewhere else. This neighborhood is a little bit dangerous. Thing is, I didn't see anything on the street. I tried to look outside. Even there is a stair, the emergency exit stair. I went down there. I didn't see anyone on the street. So I thought it is always like that. Even at midnight, someone gonna bang on the door and say open. I thought it's a random thing what is happening every single night. But I didn't realize it's gonna be taking someone's life. The crime in the city is going up every single day. I got my nose broken because I work as a security. So even it is crazy everywhere.
CBC's Karen Pauls and Lauren Donnelly, who you heard there speaking to West Broadway residents yesterday on Windy Sunday. No arrests have yet been made. The homicide unit continues to investigate. You can go online to read the latest at cbc.ca/Manitoba. We can tell you this morning now, in this incident, which as police have shared, involved 5 people in terms of who were hurt or injured. 4 of them now have been killed. So 4 deaths in this incident. Angela Clausen of the West Broadway Bear Clan said news of the tragedy has been very hard for the neighborhood around Langside. The group is in fact going to meet this week to discuss the possibility of stepping up patrols in the area as a way of calming fears. And she added if police are able to make arrests, then local residents will feel safer.
There are stories you just can't stop thinking about. They take you somewhere, they introduce you to someone, they share something new with you. Liftoff. Those are the stories you want to share with your friends, and CBC's award-winning documentary team is bringing them to you every week on Storylines. Storylines, new this season on CBC Radio 1, and always on demand on the CBC Listen app.
10 to 8 right now. Nice, mostly clear sky in downtown Winnipeg. It was an inky blue a little bit earlier. Now it's clearing out for the sun to come up. -14, and we will have a mix of sun and cloud today in Winnipeg with a high around -9. Still ahead after 8 o'clock on this show, we're going to talk to a Winnipeg teacher who is using AI to her advantage in the classroom. So a positive story about how it can work for you. Next, though, a Winnipeg man says he's been fighting to get out from under the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba for months. And as you may have heard on the news, if he isn't successful soon, he says he may lose his house. The I-Team's Caroline Bargout is in studio to give us more details on the story. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
So how did this man end up under the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba? And for those that don't know, can you walk us through exactly what that means?
Absolutely. You remember how Britney Spears was under conservatorship and her father controlled all her finances and he made all the decisions for her for years? Well, it's like that, except in this case, it's actually the state that controls your life. In the early years, people used to be put in institutions or asylums if they were deemed incapable of taking care of themselves. Nowadays, they're placed under the care of the public guardian and trustee. It's a government department that makes decisions on a person's behalf. Now, if you own a house or you rent an apartment, the trustee is supposed to use your money to make sure that those bills are paid. Last December, Paul Cameron Miller walked from his home in the Earl Grey neighborhood to a pharmacy. He went to pick up some seizure medication. He says he walked for a couple of hours and eventually froze his feet. He ended up in the hospital, and while he was there, doctors diagnosed him with dementia. Then they placed him under the control of the Public Trustee and Guardian of Manitoba, or PGT for short. He spent 6 months in different health facilities, then was discharged to the Salvation Army. To this day, he doesn't understand why.
I'm angry, and I'm not an individual who angers easily, but I am very, very upset at the way the year has gone. I want it back. I want that year back. I want to live it my way. I want to live it so it's not going to be bouncing around from hospital to hospital and then ending up at the Salvation Army.
After spending a month at the Salvation Army at Main and Higgins, Miller's friend found him and got him out. He's been living with her ever since.
How does someone get put under the care of the Public Trustee and the Guardian of Manitoba then?
So the process actually starts after a doctor decides that you are not capable of looking after yourself. In Miller's case, he believes that his seizure medications mixed with whatever medications he was given in the hospital for his frozen feet caused him to appear as if he had dementia, which is what doctors actually diagnosed him with. Miller doesn't remember much about the 6 months that he spent in care, first in the hospital and then in other medical facilities. His friend of 30 years, Chris Olofsson, she took him in after she found him at the Salvation Army. Now, she's been fighting on his behalf, trying to get him out of the PGT.
They have absolute control over his life. And that's a real problem because these are the most vulnerable people in our society who are being affected by this. He still doesn't have access to his medical records to find out how this all happened to begin with, to get any of his financial records as to the breakdown of what's been paid out, what has PGT been doing, where has his money been going. We have no idea.
What has Miller's life been like under public guardianship then?
He says his life has not been his own. He can't work because he doesn't have access to a social insurance number. He used to make money as a musician. He can't do that anymore. He's 65, so he is receiving old age security and CPP, but that goes directly to the PGT. For the past 10 years, Miller has owned a home in the Earl Grey neighborhood. He did have some financial problems before ending up in the hospital. He owed about $85,000. He's now being told that his home will likely go into foreclosure or could be sold by the bank to pay his outstanding debts. Now, Miller is trying desperately to get out from under the PGT so he can try and sell his house to a friend or something. His house is boarded up and he's been told no one is allowed inside. Here's Chris Olofsson again.
It's just been so frustrating. Even when it comes to the whole idea of losing his house, we had said, okay, look, my daughter could buy his house as an investment property or something like that. We can work these things out. Can he please have his, reading glasses, his winter coat that are in the house? Can we get into the house just to get some of the basics for him? They haven't allowed us into the house at all. They will not allow us into the house.
We've not been able to get a reason as to why Miller is not allowed to enter the house.
What rights does Miller have under the PGT?
Well, none, really. He says it's as if he doesn't exist. The way the system is supposed to work is that the trustee assigned to a person is supposed to make decisions in accordance with that individual's wishes. Now, Doug Surtees is a law professor at the University of Saskatchewan. He specializes in guardianship and says that the public trustee is considered a guardian of last resort when there's no one else to look after a person.
It's not about a guardian deciding what they think is best for the client and then making that decision. They're supposed to implement the decision that the client would if the client were able to. And you can only do that if you really have a good understanding of the client's life. And with the size of the caseloads that most officers at the public guardian and trustee offices around the country have, I just don't see how they could humanly do that.
There are nearly 4,000 Manitobans under the public trustee. There are 79 full-time staff members in charge of over $187 million worth of assets. This means that each caseworker has about 50 clients to manage. Now, CBC News looked at several years of annual reports, and we found that in the past 10 years, the province has only increased staff in the trustee's office by 4 people, even though caseloads are up 25%.
What happens next?
So Miller is trying to get out of guardianship, and he says that his family doctor has written a letter to the public trustee on his behalf, but that process won't be an easy one. For example, we wanted to interview someone from the public trustee to find out what happened in this case. We even got Miller to give the agency permission to discuss his case. But a government spokesperson said a person under guardianship can't actually give consent. A spokesperson for the agency said a person is only placed under guardianship when there is a demonstrated need for decisions to be made for the behalf or for the benefit of the client. Now, Miller wanted to get a lawyer, but legal aid won't take on his case because it's too complicated. Here's Doug Surtees again.
Once a guardianship order has been granted, the adult will be seen as not being able to enter a contract. And if that's the case, the lawyer solicitor client relationship is based on a contract. So it makes the hiring of a lawyer very, very challenging. We have a justice system in this country that doesn't allow the state to take away liberties or impose a sentence on somebody accused of crimes unless that person has the right to be represented by counsel. But we do it with guardianship all the time.
So Miller hopes to meet with the trustees sometime today to discuss his finances and where things are at with his house. He's been trying to get this meeting and trying to get in touch with someone from the trustee's office for months. They finally phoned him back after CBC started looking into his case. Now, Miller believes the meeting is only happening because he shared his story with us.
All right, Caroline, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Caroline Bargout from our I-team. You can read more online. Heather Wells is in with headlines.
Winnipeg police still on the scene of a house on Langside after early Sunday morning shooting, claiming the lives of 4 people. Now, police had said yesterday 3 people had died. A man and woman were critical. The family of the woman telling CBC News late last night she too has passed away. And if you normally take a bus around the city, you may need some extra time this morning. The city of Winnipeg's warning of possible transit delays today as the Union for Transit Workers steps up job action. More Manitoba News at 8:30.
Sean called the commute line northbound Salter at Logan. The base of the Slaw-Rebchuk Bridge, there's an issue. A stalled car in the curb lane right at the base of the bridge, so watch for that. In Winnipeg, -14, heading for -9, and still ahead, a local teacher using AI to her advantage in the classroom. Stay with us. You're with 89.3.
On Q with Tom Power.
Jinx Monsoon and Ben De La Creme are some of the biggest superstars in the world of drag, and they'll be here to talk about the holiday specials that inspired them, how they build a sense of safety and community at their shows, and what keeps them coming back to collaborate with one another every year.
It's the time of year where we get a little nutty.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Rent in this country has gone up dramatically, and many Canadians are having trouble covering the costs. Rent banks are a solution, providing emergency funding and keeping people from being evicted. We'll talk about how some cities are trying to help coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcy Young. Today is the final day of the 4-day humanitarian pause in Gaza, but negotiators are working on an extension. While that work goes on, another 11 Israeli hostages are due to be freed today in exchange for more than 30 Palestinians being held in Israeli jails. Margaret Evans has the latest from Jerusalem.
The sound of relief as one more group of Israeli hostages was reported back in Israel late yesterday, cheered across the country, especially by survivors in the communities from where Hamas killed and kidnapped its victims on October 7th. Iftak Selnika is from Kibbutz Be'eri.
I think it was literally the first moment of happiness that we had here for a long, long time.
14 other members of his community are still believed held hostage. This is the last of a 4-day agreed pause to allow for exchanges between hostages held by Hamas and Palestinians held in Israeli jails. But talk of an extended truce continues to surface. Last-minute differences over the agreed names on today's exchange lists highlight the tenuous nature of it all.
I've never seen the scale before, the destruction.
UNICEF's James Elder, inside Gaza, says there must be a longer break in fighting to ease the suffering of Palestinians there.
And the people, they just bear the marks of immense distress.
The pause has allowed for a greater volume of aid trucks to enter the Gaza Strip, but NGOs say it's far from enough. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to resume fighting against Hamas with full force when the pause ends. But most analysts agree pressure to secure the release of still more hostages will be enormous. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Montreal police are investigating an attack on a Jewish community council building. A statement from the group says a Molotov cocktail was thrown at the door of the building early this morning. A broken window was also found. Officials say no one was hurt. Police are reviewing security camera footage and looking for anyone who may have witnessed the event. Canada's housing advocate says governments have neglected Inuit housing for too long. The full extent of the problem in Labrador and Nunavut will be revealed later this hour. The advocate's full report will be released in Ottawa, but the CBC's Ariana Kelland has already had a first-hand look at the housing crisis. She spoke to Inuit in Nain, Labrador.
I actually punched a hole in here before to let it brook right into a bucket.
The ceiling of Kenneth Dicker's home sags. The 67-year-old widower says his needs are simple and downplays the severity of the grey and black mold that hangs over his head.
I said it's livable anyway. It is livable, yeah, for me.
In Nain, there is nowhere to buy a bucket of tar, gallon of paint, or piece of plywood. You need money and means. That's just one of the glaring problems highlighted in a new report by Canada's housing advocate, Marie-Josée Houle.
Inuit in the north are in crisis.
For decades, Nain has been faced with overcrowding, hidden homelessness, and dilapidated dwellings.
A lot of the crises that Inuit are facing around housing is due to neglect, broken promises on behalf of governments.
Nain's housing dilemma can be traced back to the forced relocation of Inuit from Hebron, a community hundreds of kilometers to the north, in the 1950s. It created overcrowding and social problems that persist today. Nain's Anglicok, or Mayor, Joe Dicker.
We have to take it seriously. We have to do something about it now.
The housing advocate agrees. In consultation with Inuit governments, Houle has made a number of recommendations, including an urgent call for coordination of all levels of government to increase access to funding and supplies. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, Nain, Labrador.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is expected to put her controversial Sovereignty Act into action today. She says she will use the law to shield Alberta's power companies from the federal government's proposed clean electricity rules. For more on the implications, let's go to CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Janice, why is Premier Smith doing this?
Well, it might be just a shot across the bow. The regulations Smith is pushing back on, they aren't even final yet, but this is an escalation from simply complaining, making vague threats about the unfairness of the federal clean electricity regulations, to actually now acting on what the Smith government will argue is a legal justification for her provincial authorities to disregard the national standards that are supposed to be in effect by 2035. Smith has said for months that timeline is too short because Alberta relies more on natural gas. It's going to be relatively harder for it to comply with the federal regulations. And Smith says she's not going to leave her province without the affordable electricity it needs in the meantime if the real goal is actually net zero emissions by 2050. She told the audience of her Saturday morning radio show that the person who doesn't get how unfair this is the federal environment minister.
Stephen Guilbeault, I don't know. He's a maverick. He doesn't seem to care about the law, doesn't care about the Constitution. I do, and we're going to make sure that we assert that.
Jurisdiction for environmental regulations is shared between the federal and provincial governments. Recent court decisions have sided with people who argued Ottawa was overreaching with things like its environmental impact assessments and plastics regulations. This piles on to that to also push back on these electricity regulations.
Where does this leave the federal government?
Well, a federal provincial working group was supposed to be trying to sort this out before the regulations were finalized, and a spokesperson for Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson told CBC News over the weekend, notwithstanding this move, that work continues in good faith. But when Atlantic premiers, cabinet ministers and Liberal MPs from there pushed back against clean fuel regulations and escalating carbon prices on home heating that they felt disproportionately targeted their region, they got a bit of a reprieve. So we'll see if a similar argument for Western Canada finds the same kind of sympathy in Ottawa.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. New Zealand's new Conservative government is promising to repeal the country's anti-smoking laws. The ban would have been a first of its kind. Anyone born after 2008 would not be allowed to buy cigarettes. It also limited the levels of nicotine in cigarettes and the number of retailers. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon and his new government were sworn in earlier today. He says his focus is on making life better for people of New Zealand.
We now have a responsibility to deliver for New Zealanders, to give them clear, demonstrable and measurable improvements in the quality of their lives.
The National Party leader says his government is still committed to reducing tobacco use, but he says a smoking ban would have only fed into illegal sales of tobacco. The British Columbia government will face dozens of healthcare and pharmaceutical companies in court today. It is seeking certification for a class action lawsuit over the costs of the opioid crisis. The province began the massive legal undertaking in August of 2018. At that time, it passed legislation that would recover costs from firms alleged to have contributed to the opioid addiction crisis. The certification hearing is expected to last about 4 weeks. A civil trial would then have to be held to determine if the companies are liable for damages. This might be the busiest week of the year for fishers in southwest Nova Scotia. Crews are preparing boats and traps for the start of lobster season. It is the most lucrative fishery in Canada, but there is a new push to phase out diesel boats used to fish lobster. And as Brett Ruskin reports, that's causing concern about what the future holds for the industry.
Lobster boats could soon be changing. That's what a diesel boat sounds like, but this is an electric prototype. Sue Malloy and her team at Glass Ocean Electric made that prototype. They added an electric motor to the diesel drive shaft to create a hybrid.
We left the existing throttle for the diesel engine. We added another throttle for the electric.
Cheaper fuel, lower maintenance, quieter, and better for the environment. All positive points for Andrew Arbuckle, who fishes in northern Nova Scotia. He could use the diesel engine to get out to a spot offshore and then switch to electric to check the traps.
Would you buy, build, have an electric boat? Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But not everyone agrees. Dan Fleck represents fishing crews in southwest Nova Scotia, where the season opens this week.
I don't know that I could find anyone in southwest Nova Scotia at this time who would be interested in converting or adapting their vessel to accept an electric motor to propel their vessel in the lobster fishery.
Just no.
Just no.
He explained boats here are bigger, conditions tougher, and fishing trips last days, not hours. Electric options could soon cut costs and emissions, but getting everyone on board with the idea might take some time. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and welcome to Monday. Hopefully you're up and into it already. We've got a mostly clear sky in downtown Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Markusa. This is CBC. You're on the morning show, Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app. It is chilly out there. You can see your breath for sure in big puffs of smoke. It's clear and crisp. It is minus 14 degrees in Winnipeg. This half hour on the program, we talk a lot about the challenges with artificial intelligence, especially when it comes to schools. But one Winnipeg teacher says that other educators shouldn't be quick to dismiss AI in the classroom. We're going to find out how she uses TikTok to help other teachers learn how to best navigate AI to their advantage. We're also going to hear this half hour about an emotional night of music coming up this week at the West End Cultural Centre. We'll hear from the composer of The Lonely Men's Suite. So stay tuned. That's coming up as well, something you can get out and do later in the week. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. We've had a serious weekend in the city with different events and incidents, I should say. And she's here now with an update. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, some people who live on Langside say they are afraid crime in the area is getting a little too close for comfort. 4 people are dead after a mass shooting there early yesterday. Now, yesterday, police said 3 people died and a man and woman remained critical. The family of the woman telling CBC News late last night she too has passed away. Abdullah Al-Saim says he doesn't feel safe there. He says he only moved into the area last month, but now is thinking about moving somewhere else. Police remain on the scene this morning. And a Winnipeg man who was deemed incapable of caring for himself says he is going to lose his house unless he gets out from under the public guardian and trustee of Manitoba. We're going to hear more of his story in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on with traffic and weather, starting with traffic. Something developing?
A couple of things to tell you about Marcy and our listeners. So northbound Lajimoje past Chief Peguis, there's a stall blocking the northbound median lane. Keep right to pass. That is from the Winnipeg Traffic Management X feed. Also, Sean called just before the news. Northbound Salter at Logan. Oh, Sean, our friendly neighborhood air compressor guy, I should say. Add some context and color there. There is, was anyway, it still might be there, but northbound Salter at Logan at the base of the Slaw-Rebchuk Bridge, a stalled car in the curb lane. And there was another vehicle that was trying to help that person. So there could still be 1 or 2 cars, or maybe no cars if that's been cleared up. But if you have any news on that or anything else happening in traffic, 788-3093 is the traffic and commuter line. Now, let's get to this forecast. Beautiful, clear morning here in the Peg. We're at -14, so clear and cold. Wind chill hovering around -19. Going to get to a -9 today. And much of central and southern Manitoba is going to see a -9. Tonight, we're going to dip down to a very cold -18. Very cold. And then tomorrow we will wake up to a +2. Well, we'll wake up to that -18, but then warm up to a +2 tomorrow. Mix of sun and clouds, slight chance of 30s, but Wednesday, 3 and sunshine, okay? 3 and sunshine. And good looking week. We're still at minus single digits going into the rest of the week. Now, I have looked at the 14-day forecast again from our friends at the Weather Network. Still, daytime highs for the next 14 days, so, all in the minus single digits.
I'm super happy for what you're talking about, but if everybody hears me going, you might have heard me going, at one point, that wasn't for the southern Manitoba. That is for our friends in northern Manitoba.
It's chilly.
The cold spot is Lynn Lake this morning. It's minus 34 in Lynn Lake. It's minus 27 in Thompson. So I'm trying not to be overly celebratory and remember the whole province, but it's hard not to enjoy what's going on down south. And as you said, the next 2 weeks look pretty good.
And Churchill's minus 20, but it's going to be clear and cold with a minus 21.
Old.
There you go. I'll just mention again, it is a good looking morning out there, but minus 14 in the city of Winnipeg.
Well, we have all joked about robots taking over the world, but here we are in 2023. And with the rise of AI, it seems that future might not be too far away. One Winnipeg educator says, though, rather than running from this, we should embrace it. Grade 6 teacher Sophie Theodora has always been fascinated with technology, she says, and now she's using AI tools like ChatGPT to spice up her classroom. But she's also using TikTok to teach other educators how they can use AI in their classrooms as well. Here, before we talk to her, is one of Sophie's TikToks.
I just did the best class-wide Friday fun activity with my class, and it only took me 10 minutes to prep. I'm going to show you how I did it using AI. It was a spelling bee, and they were so into it. I chose 10 rounds, each with increasing difficulty, and made a quick spreadsheet on Excel into their 5 table group color teams. At the bottom of each team's row, make sure to press equals, sum, bracket, highlight all the cells, end bracket, enter, and it'll automatically add up all the sums for you. I then mirrored it to my projector so the whole class could see. Then, instead of having to take hours to create 50 words with their definitions, origins, and sentences, all I did was go into GPT and enter this exact prompt. Give me all my words with their associated sentences, definitions, and origins. My class wanted to do something fun. They wanted to do a spelling bee. I didn't have much time to prep at the end of a Friday, and I got this done in 10 minutes, and I guarantee they're going to remember it forever. It was so much fun.
So that's a clip from one of Sophie's TikToks. She started posting on TikTok during the summer months. She's already amassed a following of nearly 20,000 people, and I bet a lot of them are educators, and she's in studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I love that example because you're using it for speed. You're using it for, as you said, something that would take forever to look up all the definitions, and it's immediate. When did you start sort of thinking about, using AI in this efficient way in the class?
Absolutely. So I became interested in AI when ChatGPT came out about a year ago in December 2022, and I've been keeping up with the news and newsletters weekly, reading about it. And then over the summer, in one of the newsletters, they mentioned an AI tool for teachers. So I started diving deeper into that, and I actually saw a TikTok that another teacher made in the United States, and I said, hey, I can make videos like this. So I kind of started creating 2 or 3 videos and forgot about it for a couple of days, and I came back and I had about 3,000 followers, and I guess teachers were really interested in this kind of thing and these free tools that could help them save time, and finally the assistant they've always kind of needed and wanted. So
is it you used it there to find things that are factual and indisputable? So,
yes.
Well, for the most part,
for the most part, yes.
Usually, you got to double check everything, right?
Of course.
But definitions and to do some math.
Yes, absolutely.
What else have you used it for, or have you found it useful for in the classroom?
Oh, lots. So there's ChatGPT, and then there's lots of different AI tools catered specifically for teachers. Other ways I've used AI in the classroom so far is chatting with historical chatbots. So kind of making history or social studies a little bit more engaging by actually talking to L'Oreal or talking to the Wright brothers and asking them questions. Another way I've used it is...
Can I stop you there?
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
do the kids respond to that?
They thought it was unreal.
That would be, I think I want to hear what that would be like.
Yes.
So the kids must have just been like, this is awesome.
Yes, absolutely. And I also have the ability to create my own chatbot, so I could create one of Drake or of their favorite YouTuber or whatever it might be.
Got it.
So it definitely piques interest.
What other ways have you, what's the engagement from teachers been like, and people who are on your TikToks now? What have you heard from them?
Yes, absolutely. The people on my TikTok have become there's quite a big AI teacher community now, and people trying out different tools and whatnot. And I've met a lot of people primarily in the United States. And it's interesting because a lot of the AI software is blocked on their computers. So they can't use a lot of it. But there's definitely been an increase in interest in the AI teacher community. Absolutely.
It blocked particularly on educators in the States?
Yes.
Yeah. And here you've not found any blocks?
I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't. I do most of my prep at home on my computer, but when I'm using the software at school, it's okay.
What else have you used it for? Do you use it for any of the admin work? I'm just curious.
Yes, absolutely. It can help me generate report card comments. It can help me generate outlines for emails. It can help me compress really long documents I have to read and just extract the key information, because as teachers, we don't have a ton of prep time, and we want to have the most face-to-face time with our students possible. So anything that can kind of speed track the admin process is really valuable to us.
So you're looking at as supplementing the work you already do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What do you think, what's the buzz in the teaching community about the hesitance around embracing AI?
For sure. I think there is a lot of misconceptions that teachers are using it to be lazy or to cheat, and that's not the case at all. If you look at the majority of professions nowadays are using AI in some way to enhance their workflow. So if teachers are using it ethically, there's nothing wrong with it. If it allows them to have more time with their students, one-on-one, face-to-face, direct instruction, then it's a good thing.
What reaction do you get from students when you tell them you're going to use AI?
Oh, that was funny. Well, when one of the students saw me on ChatGPT with the spelling bee, he said, "What? You use ChatGPT? That's cheating." And then you know what? It was good because it prompted a really good discussion and a good teachable learning moment, because these students are going to be coming into contact with ChatGPT or AI. It's not going anywhere. It's a whole revolution. So why not educate them on how to use it properly now?
So somewhere they got messages that it's bad.
Yes. Yeah.
Already. And then you have to sort of educate them about how it can be used.
Exactly. I think the whole thing was, when it came out, professors and teachers were upset about students using it to cheat, which rightfully so. But now there are ways around that. And now there are other ways that we can actually use it to enhance critical thinking.
Do you so you're part of a community that's teaching this and using it, and then you're talking to the kids and educating them. Some are excited, some are questioning you. What's the parental reaction been like?
I haven't heard much feedback from parents yet, but on my TikTok, there's lots of parents that comment and say, "This is so cool. Can I use this at home with my child?" Or if I showcase a tool, they're always curious. So not too much negative backlash on
Have
that.
you run into anything that has given you pause about using it, or something that you learned where maybe that you could pass on that's a best practice if teachers are interested in listening?
Absolutely. So it's not just something that you can plug in a prompt or tell it to do something and it's going to do it perfectly the first time, which I think is a big misconception that AI will just do it for you. It takes a lot of probing and prompting and kind of training the chatbots to get what you really want. So be patient. Maybe do some research on prompt engineering, which is what it's called when you kind of when you prompt the chatbot to get your desired outcome. And AI is not going to replace you. We know students struggle to learn remotely, as we saw in COVID. The face-to-face instruction will never be replaced. So why not use a tool that allows you to have more of that?
So an example of training the bot, I guess, or getting the bot used to what you need,
yes,
might be, I guess, if you have. Can you give us an example? I'm thinking of the
Absolutely.
Louis Riel thing or whatever, but where did it go wrong maybe?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If anyone's used ChatGPT, they'll probably experience a little bit of this frustration if I say, write me a report card comment for English language arts reading. It'll give me a report card comment that is not anything to do with what I want or the style I want or the outcomes I need. So you really have to be specific and give it specific instructions, which does take time, and it is a skill you need to learn. So be patient with it. There's lots of resources.
So what might you say instead of that? Is it more, do you build it? Like write me a report card and then wait, and then write me a report card about English. Do you sort of layer and add on?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's lots of layers to the prompt engineering, but there, again, there's tons of free resources out there in YouTube and TikTok. That's where I learned everything, is really just TikTok and through talking to other teachers on the platform.
Is it difficult at all within the school communities? Like some teachers, I don't know much about school communities in terms of how much freedom you have to explore. If this is enhancing your work, then I would think why not? But is it fully accepted and supported to explore using AI in the class?
I feel supported. Yes, I mostly do my research at home and on my downtime because it truly is something that interests me. But again, talking to some of my peers in my online community, I know it's very different depending on where you live or the division that you teach in.
Sure, it's all it's a lot of that. It's school dependent, I bet.
Exactly,
like
exactly.
Just before you go this morning, do you have tips that you'd give to parents then on the other side of this who might want to teach their kids how to better navigate AI as a tool as a student?
Absolutely. Some tips I would recommend is learning how to use ChatGPT, not to cheat, but to be a helper. So for example, if a parent doesn't remember grade 7 algebra, they can always go on and get some pointers there and check it out that way and tell it to explain it to me like I'm in 7th grade, and then they can help their child with their homework, or perhaps creating ideas for an essay or a skeleton for an essay, or kind of just using it for coaching purposes in that way. And then there's lots of other cool resources. I know a lot of students are into programming and coding, and that has a lot of AI behind it. So utilizing free resources such as like code.org, which is run by Microsoft, has a lot of cool programs.
You mean parents don't remember algebra from grade 7?
Maybe, but maybe not geometry. I don't know.
Thanks for coming in.
Of
Really,
course.
really great conversation for educators. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcy. Nice
to see you. That's Sophie Theodoro. She's a 6th grade teacher, Theodoro rather, 6th grade teacher. Sophie can be found on TikTok at Teach2, that's the number 2, Teach2 AI.
It's not just how a story is told. It's about whose story it is to tell. It's not just playing what's new. It's setting the stage for what's next. It's not just about the game. It's bringing your game. It's not just trusted news. It's being where it matters because it matters. It's not how Canadian you are. It's who you are in Canada. It's not just one thing. CBC. It's a Canada thing.
It is 8:25 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app. I'm Marcy Markusa. You're listening to CBC. Listen, this may be cleared up already, but I'll mention it in case. Northbound Salter at Logan, base of the Slawrebchuk Bridge, could have a stall there affecting things. If you see anything in the commute, 788-3093 is where you can reach us. In Winnipeg, it is minus 14 and it's mostly clear downtown in the city. Well, this week there's going to be an emotional night of music coming up. Sean Irvin's A Perfect Castle is one of the movements from something called the Lonely Men's Suite. It's work that's going to be part of a special show being put on by the Winnipeg Jazz Orchestra. Music of Our Time is happening Thursday night at the West End Cultural Centre. Sean Irvin was on the weekend morning show in conversation with Shanley Vidal on Sunday, and he talked to her about the inspiration for this special show, the Lonely Men's Suite.
When I wrote this suite, it was a series of gay men's stories. And I met these individuals over the years. And, you know, blessed be from Canada, my experiences were very different than many. And as they opened up about their tales, I realized just how emotionally impactful those stories were. And being a musician, I wanted to find a way of expressing those stories in ways that words wouldn't reach. So instrumental music was a great avenue for that. And I found it was like creating a movie soundtrack. You have this story, but you want to emphasize that story through sound and experience, right? So it's like the strings in a horror movie, as you know, the tension is building. The goal is with this music to take those stories and then emphasize those through the colors of sound that you can get through orchestration.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it, because you have all these stories, and how do you tell them through music?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. I was a huge musical person growing up. That and obviously movies. I watched maybe too many movies at this point. But, you know, I think it's like a language. You learn this language over time from seeing a lot of musicals or seeing a lot of jazz or seeing a lot of these soundtracks, and you start to associate, okay, this sound means this, right? There's all these little cues. So, you know, I might have this individual or character, but it's like I'm trying to introduce the audience to them through depicting certain qualities of sound. So this individual, for example, in A Perfect Castle, he would be very bright and colorful, and at times his past would cause him to shift. So maybe through the harmony, we have something major and very bright, and then it just sort of suddenly flows into something a little bit darker and minor. And that's supposed to be a symbol of his character and the battle that he struggled with his identity as a gay man.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about his story and maybe some of the other stories?
Yeah. I mean, they're tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely some movements where I'm giving my explanations and we go through it, and there's some tears that fight. You know, one of which, I mean, Perfect Castle is a great example. So a perfect castle is a metaphor for the idea that the castle protects everyone from the outside, but the perfect castle has no way to breach it. So it also stops the person from getting out on the inside. And it was a metaphor for this individual who struggled with being adopted at a very young age and never meeting their birth parents, and being in a family where it wasn't okay to talk about being gay. And he created this image within his life of everything being perfect. Everything was well put together. The dream job, the dream friends, the dream family from the seeming inside. But, you know, the thing that really stuck with me with this individual was I can be everything everyone wants me to be, but I can't be who I am.
Powerful conversation. Shanley Vidal, who was hosting this weekend's morning show, in conversation there was Sean Irvin, a saxophonist and director of the Sean Irvin Quintet, composer of the Lonely Men's Suite. It's going to be part of a show you can check out on Thursday. If you want more information, it's at the West End Cultural Centre, but you can go to winnipegjazzorchestra.com for tickets and more details. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News. This
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It is sunny for the most part. Minus 14 right now in Winnipeg. We're headed to a high of minus 9. Some people who live on Langside Street say they are afraid crime in the neighbourhood is getting worse. Winnipeg police were called about a mass shooting in the area of Langside between Sarah and Broadway just after 4 Sunday morning. 4 people are dead. Police had said yesterday 3 people died and a man and woman were in critical condition. But the family of the woman telling CBC News late last night she too has passed away. Abdullah Al-Saim says he heard loud noises in the early hours of Sunday morning. He heard a car revving its engine, followed by what he thought was a woman crying loudly. Al-Saim says he doesn't feel safe.
I'm really scared. I just moved down here last month, but now I'm reconsidering, I might have to go somewhere else. This neighborhood is a little bit dangerous.
Angela Clausen at the West Broadway Bear Clan says the group will meet to discuss the possibility of stepping up patrols in the area. She and others say if police are able to make arrests, local residents will feel safer. Now, Constable Jason Mikulishin yesterday said at that point no arrests had been made.
The investigation, again, still in its early stages, and we're doing our very best to determine exactly what's taken place. I can't really comment on anything more than, the gravity of what we're dealing with here.
Police ask anyone with information, including video surveillance, to call the homicide unit or Crime Stoppers. A Winnipeg man is desperately trying to get out from under the public trustee and guardian of Manitoba after doctors deemed him incapable of making decisions for himself. He was diagnosed with dementia. Paul Cameron Miller had walked to the pharmacy. He froze his feet and spent 6 months in hospital. Miller says there has been a terrible mistake. He's now trying to prove he is mentally sound and can take care of his own affairs. For nearly a year, he hasn't had access to his bank account, his home, or any of his belongings. All that now is controlled by a public trustee.
I got through the angry part. Now it's time to get some justice here.
Since CBC News started looking into this case, the trustee's office has reached out to Miller and is supposed to meet with him today. Well, today is the final day of the 4-day pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas. Thousands of people last night lining the streets near a military base in southern Israel as the latest group of hostages arrived from Gaza. 14 people were included in that release, with another scheduled to be handed over today. In that exchange, 33 Palestinians are expected to be released from Israeli prisons. As for the 4-day pause in fighting, Hamas says it is willing to consider an extension. However, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas needs to guarantee the release of at least another 10 hostages every day. If you normally take the bus around Winnipeg, you may need some extra time today. The City of Winnipeg warning of possible transit delays as the Union for Transit Workers steps up job action. The Amalgamated Transit Union has rejected the city's latest offer, citing unsafe working conditions and the high demand for overtime causing stress for transit operators. The union represents more than 1,400 workers at Winnipeg Transit and at Brandon Transit. If you've been looking for a bag of sugar, you're not the only one. Workers at the Rogers Sugar Refinery in Vancouver have been on strike for nearly 2 months. That's resulted in low supplies and higher prices at grocery stores across Western Canada. Jeremy Coley works at Food Fair on Portage. He's had to deal with a lot of puzzled customers.
Most of them are okay with it, but a lot of people get quite upset with you because Christmas is right around the corner, so they're kind of freaking out.
Coley says his store received a big shipment from a wholesaler and restocked their shelves yesterday. Rogers and its union agreed to mediation yesterday. The sticking points are wages, benefits, and a proposal from the company to increase operations to 24 hours a day year-round. Well, this year's Booker Prize was awarded last night in London.
I am delighted to announce that the winner of the Booker Prize 2023 is Prophet Song by Paul Lynch.
Paul Lynch's prophet song deals with a woman's struggle to protect her family as Ireland collapses into totalitarianism and war. Among the other books on the shortlist was Study for Obedience by Canadian Sarah Bernstein. It won the Giller Prize earlier this month. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Stay in step by checking out cbcmanitoba.ca.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks to Heather Wells and Joni Niccolo, who are in our news department this morning. Big thanks to our live team, Travis Peterson behind the YouTube controls, to Abby Adeyemi behind the radio board, and to Pat Kanuga, who is not quite done. He's here with Last Traffic.
Quick one to mention. So this is at Kenniston and Scurfield, stalled car southbound shoulder. So once again, intersection Kenniston and Scurfield, stalled car southbound shoulder. That is from Winnipeg Traffic Management X account. And Marcy, you were mentioning Lynn Lake, minus 34 this morning, cold spot in the province. Well, minus 2 tomorrow for a daytime high. So the north is getting some warmth as well. A minus 11 Wednesday, minus 14 for Thursday. We have a bit of a warming trend here the next few days.
Lynn Lake is minus 2 tomorrow?
That's what it says here, according to Environment Canada. Thompson's going to be warming up from minus 16 to minus 11 as well throughout the morning tomorrow. Or actually minus 24 to minus 16 by morning, and then a high of minus 8 tomorrow. So a little bit warmer in the north as well. Here in the Peg, we're at minus 14, been stuck there all morning. Going to get to a minus 9 today, the coldest day of the next 7. And we will see this mix of sun and cloud tomorrow, a 2, Wednesday, a 3 in the sunshine. So some mild temperatures here. Once again, we're minus 14. Have a fabulous Monday, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you to our hardworking team of associate producers and our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. Wednesday morning, if you care about Arlington Bridge, if you're worried about its closure, if it affects your life or your family, please consider joining us, or at least call the listener line about it, 788-3205. We're going to be live at Luda's, 410 Aberdeen in the North End. So hopefully you can join us for a live show. We're back tomorrow also. Take care.